Chapter 677. Why had Xianxia become the most powerful of the 5 countries in the Central Plains? First, Xianxia had a unique geographical advantage. Its borders were only bordered by other Central Plains countries, and there were no foreign invasions. Second, Xianxia was the first to be established among the 5 countries. It had seized much of the wealth of the previous dynasty and attracted many noble families. With no foreign invasions and the wealth accumulated by the aristocratic families, it was expected that it would become the leader of the 5 countries. However, excessive comfort had given rise to internal strife. Today Xianxia had followed in the footsteps of Dongqing. The internal strife was becoming more and more brutal. In addition to internal strife, the rich, extravagant and comfortable life had distorted the thinking of some people, and they could do whatever they wanted. Just as the man in gray had mocked, Xianxia had caused so much trouble purely because too few people had died. If they arranged a bunch of enemies for Xianxia who were like tigers waiting for wolves, and made their borders unpeaceful, countless young men would be sacrificed, and newborns would be reduced year by year. Let's see if they could still continue with the so-called for self-accomplishment classics for women, forbidding widows from remarrying, restricting women from keeping their chastity. It was the biggest joke in the world. The man in gray left the tea house and followed his memory to the place where the drowning ceremony was held. By the time he arrived, there was already a crowd gathered in front of him. They were standing by the water's edge and pointing. The noisy discussion was mixed with the sound of crying. The man in gray lowered his eyes and looked in the direction of the crying. The crying child was young. The boy was older, about 7 or 8 years old. The girl was young and skinny, no more than 3 or 4 years old. The two were dark and skinny. Beside them was a young man in his 20s. His expression was ferocious. He protected the child and roared at the crowd. Combining the discussion in the tea house and the conversation of the villagers watching the drowning ceremony, the man in gray sorted out the outline of the story. Simply put, a young widow in her 20s couldn't bear the loneliness and stole from a man from the same village. She was caught and drowned. The man in gray took 2 steps forward. Taking advantage of his tall stature, he immediately saw the green-skinned drowned woman lying by the pond. Before he arrived, she had already been thrown into a pig cage and drowned. Not long after, the crowd of onlookers dispersed. Their faces still carried the strange joy of violating a taboo. It was so ugly that it was nauseating. The gray-clothed man was about to leave when he saw the young man jump into the water and pick up the half-submerged woman's corpse, preparing to carry it home. He lowered his eyes and stopped in his tracks. He took out some silver and gave it to the child beside the young man. Looking at the young man's attire, he didn't look like a rich man, let alone give the woman a dignified death. The young man trembled and bit his lips. His eyes were filled with tears. After a while he said in a thick accent, "Thank you, big brother." The man in gray took the opportunity to ask a few more questions and heard another version of the story. The woman who was drowned in the pond was the prettiest girl in the neighboring village. She had married into the village a few years ago. She had been married to her husband for a few years, but her belly had never moved. When she finally got pregnant and gave birth to a girl, her in-laws hated her very much. After her daughter was born, her husband died, and the woman was widowed at a young age. The in-laws treated them harshly, thinking that their granddaughter was a curse to them. They even threw her daughter into the mountains when the woman wasn't paying attention, and she was almost fed to the wolves. The young man went hunting in the mountains and happened to save his daughter. The two of them got to know each other and fell in love with each other. One was a widow who had lost her husband and lived a hard life with her only daughter. The other was a widower who had lost his wife and had a son. The two of them liked each other and were a match made in heaven. After a long time the barrier was broken. After some discussion they planned to live together and support each other. However, the woman's in-laws couldn't accept it. They scolded the woman for not keeping her chastity for their son and slandered the two of them for having an improper relationship a long time ago. The couple even went to the chief, hoping to drown the unclean woman to avoid tarnishing the family's reputation. The young man hunted all year round and used his brute force to scare away the people who came to catch the woman. He could protect her once or twice, but how could he protect the woman for a lifetime? This morning, the woman found that her daughter and stepson were missing. She was afraid that the children would be kidnapped and sold or thrown into the mountains to be fed to the wolves by her in-laws. She hurriedly came out to look for them, but she didn't expect that it was a trap. She was caught by her clansmen who had been lying in ambush and forced to drown in the pond. When the young man realized that something was wrong and hurried over, it was too late. After listening to this story, the man in gray let out a short and mocking, "Heh." What was the funniest thing in the world? A woman who could be a husband to any man asked all the women in the world to keep their chastity. Take these tails of silver and move to another place. If they remember it one day, maybe they will also catch this girl. The young man cried and looked like he had suffered a great grievance. However, he didn't accept the kindness of the man in gray. For him, the man in gray didn't come over to scold him and the woman, which was the greatest kindness. The man in gray sighed and gave the money to the boy who shrunk to the side. He couldn't help but rub the girl's hair. "What's wrong with this world?" The young man sobbed and cried while carrying the woman's cold and swollen body. "Oh, evil people will reap what they have sown." The gray-clothed man left behind these words and quietly left. That night, the imperial city was brightly lit. The musical houses were bustling everywhere, and the sound of music and bamboo instruments could be heard. There were many figures and graceful figures that made people daydream. The palace was also filled with music, and there was an extremely luxurious and beautiful atmosphere everywhere. The man in gray used his connections to sneak into the palace and arrived at the Phoenix Palace where the Empress lived with the help of a spy. At the top of the red vermilion gate hung a black board with golden threads. On the board were 3 big words: Phoenix Palace. Inside the palace, candles flickered, and on the eaves carved from sandalwood, there were phoenixes spreading their wings. In the bedroom, the beams were made of sandalwood and the curtains were made of pearls. A huge moon pearl hung in the sky, shining brightly as if it had hooked the full moon in the sky into the palace. It was like a paradise on earth. The floor was paved with white jade, shining with warm light. It was inlaid with gems and gold pearls, and the floor was chiseled into lotuses. The lotuses were vivid and exquisite, and the stamens were delicate and distinguishable. In the center there was a gilded incense burner with curling mist. Oh, it was extremely luxurious. The man in gray had already changed his clothes. He walked straight into the palace and didn't meet any palace maids on the way. "Guards, give this Empress." Inside the palace, a woman in a palace dress was kneeling in front of a dressing mirror putting makeup on. Looking closely, the mirror inlaid with gems was not made of copper. It could clearly reflect a person's figure, and it was as bright as a demon-revealing mirror. Through the reflection of the mirror, the woman in the palace dress saw a man with a weathered face standing behind her. This person's appearance gave her a very familiar feeling. This person seemed to be someone she knew. Her whole body trembled, and then she realized that there was no palace maid in the palace. She suppressed the fear in her heart and pretended to be calm. She turned around and asked him, "Who are you?" Nobles have short memories. "Do you remember Xianxia who was murdered by you more than 10 years ago?" Chapter 678. Xianxia. Wasn't this idiot already dead? The woman was so scared that her face turned pale. She didn't have the extra energy to think and could only shout "system" in her heart. In an instant, the killing intent had already approached. However, this woman was clearly a weak woman, yet she cleverly avoided Xiaqian's spear. Even though she was in a sorry state as she avoided the killing intent, and the pearls and jadeite ornaments on her head fell to the ground, it did not damage her elegance. Instead, it added a bit of pitiful weakness. As she dodged, she screamed in terror, trying to use her identity to threaten Xianxia. "Xianxia? Who is that? This Empress does not know him. Audacious, unruly commoner, how dare you sneak into the imperial palace to assassinate the Empress? 9 generations of your family shall be executed." As soon as she finished speaking, the next attack approached. This time it wasn't aimed at her heart but at her forehead. The woman had no choice but to crush something and once again coincidentally avoided a fatal blow. Xianxia frowned. He felt that his spear should have been able to pierce through, but before it could touch this person's body, the spearhead seemed to have touched an invisible layer and was forcefully bounced off. He didn't think too much about it. He didn't have much time left, so he had to kill this monster first. "System." The woman screamed in her heart, "Come out." For safety's sake, she had prepared several cards that could help her block fatal attacks. However, those cards were extremely expensive and she was relatively comfortable in the palace. At most, she would be poisoned by jealous concubines. She rarely used these things, so she didn't exchange for many. He only had 9 in his inventory. He had already wasted 2 just now, so there were only 7 left. If the 7 life-saving cards were used up, she would be dead. According to the system, the life-saving card was like a life substitution puppet, exchanging one life for another. Just now, Xianxia had shot out 2 spear strikes, killing a life substitution puppet with 1 spear strike. It was frighteningly brutal. She knew that Xianxia wasn't someone to be trifled with, but she didn't expect that after more than 10 years, this man was still so difficult to deal with. System, come out. The woman screamed inwardly. In an instant she had used another 5 life substitution puppet cards, leaving her with only 2. At this moment the system finally responded slowly. 6 million popularity points to exchange for a card. Fake? The Supreme of Wulin, the card's effect lasted for 2 hours. Host, do you want to trade? I'm sure. I'll think about it. With her life hanging by a thread, the last life substitution puppet was destroyed. The beautiful woman in the court dress chose to exchange for it without hesitation. Consider my ass. Of course I'll change it at this time. Although 6 million popularity points hurt, if she did not exchange it she would lose her life. In an instant her frail body was filled with tyrannical strength. Not only did the woman who had been fleeing in a sorry state not dodge, she even charged forward to meet him. She moved as fast as lightning, her white hand leaving a shadow in the air that was even more dazzling than the silver spear. She borrowed the force of the spear to deflect it. Xiaqian's brows knit together tightly, and he was even more certain that this unfamiliar woman before him was the monster from many years ago. It was the same back then. His wife, who had never practiced martial arts, suddenly launched a sneak attack and severely injured Xiaqian, who had practiced martial arts since he was a child. Later, he encountered bandits specially arranged by his wife. He was forced to jump off a cliff, with his only child to escape death. Back then, when he risked his life to jump off a cliff, if not for a vine that saved him and his child, how would he have the chance to seek revenge now? He was very sure that the woman in front of him, or rather this body, did not know any martial arts. Her body was delicate and frail. If Xiaqian had not coincidentally obtained an item that could lock onto this monster, he would have suspected that he had found the wrong person. Now the past was repeating itself. This person who did not know any martial arts at all had displayed the combat power of a top martial artist. Even if she was barehanded, she was still able to force Xiaqian to retreat. If Xiaqian could see supernatural things, he would probably notice that there was a strange wall floating in the air near the woman. Countless words with missing arms and broken legs floated across this wall. 666. Don't you guys think that the streamer looks like Xiaolongnu when she fights with her Snow-White Palace costume? Didn't the streamer perform How to Sleep on a Rope? She's definitely a real-life version of Xiaolongnu. Come on, streamer. If you win, I'll buy you 999 luxury yachts today. It's a pity. That middle-aged handsome guy is so charming. I really want to see the hand-to-hand fight between him and the streamer. It must be very passionate. Hee as expected of a late-night AV/V live broadcast room. Can this female streamer who sells her body not insult Xiaolongnu? Xiaolongnu is as pure as ice and as clean as jade. What kind of trash is she? I have a 200 gigabytes folder on my computer and she's a goddess. Hee. Xiaqian's spear technique was swift and fierce, carrying a fatal murderous intent. The beautiful woman was like the world's most flexible body, and her figure was soft but firm. No matter how Xiaqian attacked, the woman always responded with ease and her defense was impenetrable. The two figures began to fight in the spacious palace. After more than 300 moves, Xiaqian's offensive had already begun to weaken, but the woman was still not flushed or out of breath. From being evenly matched at the beginning, she gradually gained the upper hand. A sinister look flashed in her eyes and her attacks became more ruthless. You've really reincarnated again. Where's Yunner's corpse? Xiaqian secretly looked for an opportunity, hoping to find the woman's flaw and directly kill her. The beautiful woman's eyes were shimmering and a faint pink light flashed through them. Her cherry lips spat out vicious words. Back then when I took over her body, her soul was still there. The beautiful woman in the palace dress said with a smile, and her moves became more and more sinister and treacherous. In other words, she knew everything I did. Later I got tired of it and returned her body. Xiaqian's expression changed dramatically, and his hand holding the spear couldn't help but pause. The woman seized the opportunity to attack him. He reacted quickly and pushed her away, and the distance between them increased again. However, his arm was faintly numb. The beautiful woman in the palace dress continued to smile, ignoring Xiaqian's face that was as black as the bottom of a pot. She continued to provoke him, making him angry. Xiaxiaohe, if you didn't have the intention to kill me back then, maybe I would have spared Wang Huiyun's life and returned her to you. But you were heartless first, so you can't blame me for being unjust later. I returned Wang Huiyun's body and directly threw her into the palace's musical house. She became a prostitute for the officials and was molested by anyone. She was quite fierce and committed suicide for you to prove her innocence. As her husband, don't you feel touched? As such, how could Xiaqian bear it anymore? His originally weak attacks became fierce again with an indomitable killing intent. Which, the beautiful woman easily dealt with it. Not only was she not angry, but she even winked at him. Taking the opportunity of the fight, she burrowed into his arms and quickly flew away. Xiaqian was so angry that he couldn't maintain his rationality. At this time, messy footsteps came from outside the palace, accompanied by the sound of armor rubbing against each other. Xiaqian glared at the beautiful woman with eyes full of killing intent. Full of unwillingness, he made a feint with his spear to force her back, and then jumped out of the window to escape. The beautiful woman didn't chase after him, or rather she, a half-baked martial arts supreme with a time limit, couldn't kill Xiaqian. She looked down at her own attire, took out a dagger from the void and fiercely cut herself a few times. Then she closed her eyes and fell into a pool of blood. At this time the palace door was smashed open, and the frightened voice of the palace attendant entered her ears. Chapter 679. The Zhongzhou Empress was assassinated and the emperor was furious. He ordered the assassin to be captured within 3 days and killed on the spot. What about the empress who had lost a lot of blood? Inside the Phoenix Palace, the empress' face was pale and her eyes were shut tight. Her breathing was weak and her chest rose and fell almost imperceptibly. Her haggard appearance was heart-wrenching. The empress had fallen into a deep coma due to her severe injuries and blood loss, and no one knew when she would wake up. Little did they know that while the empress' body was asleep, her soul was unusually active. In order to cover up her flaws, she had used a dagger to hurt herself, and her soul had already flashed into the portable system space. There was a modern and romantic bungalow in the system space. It was exquisitely designed and had a garden, covering an area of more than 1,000 square meters. There were all kinds of household appliances. In order to make her life comfortable, she had spent a huge amount of popularity points to exchange for a generator and gasoline from the system to ensure that the entire villa had electricity all day long. Aside from being unable to log into the internet, her life was even better than before she transmigrated. System, what happened to you just now? Why did you only reply after I called you for so long? The beautiful woman in the palace gown had a gloomy expression. Her heart was bleeding when she thought of the life substitution puppet she had lost. One life substitution puppet card required 888,888 popularity points. If she had not prepared 9 cards for herself, Xiaqian would have killed her long ago. Thinking of the dangerous situation just now and Xiaqian's murderous intent, her face was extremely gloomy. Also, why didn't Xiaqian die? Thinking of the 9 life substitution puppets she had lost and the 6 million worth of fake Supreme of Wulin, she felt her heart tremble. If the system had responded earlier, she would not have had to pay such a huge price. After a while, the system's rigid electronic voice sounded in her ears. Host, this is normal. It's not that I didn't react in time, but Xiaqian's attack was too sharp and accurate. He destroyed a life substitution puppet with 1 shot. And the whole process took only 3 breaths of time. The system said solemnly, Host, you have committed a grave sin. Now that Xiaqian has escaped, he will definitely not let this go. Letting a tiger return to the mountain will lead to endless trouble. You were too careless. The woman was flustered. That year I clearly saw Xiaqian jump off the cliff. She had never thought that an ancient man would be able to see through her disguise. With the help of the system, she felt that her acting was quite good, but she still exposed herself. If it wasn't for the system's reminder, she wouldn't have known that Xianxia wanted to get rid of her. Although this world was in the ancient times, there were indeed a few people who were on the level of Taoists, such as monk Liaochen from the Hejian temple. Thinking of these strange people, the woman couldn't help but feel angry. Aren't you omnipotent? Why don't you know that Xianxia is still alive? If it wasn't for Xianxia, she wouldn't have had to spend so much money to get out of trouble. The system said coldly, "This is not within the system's jurisdiction. The reason Xianxia is still alive is because the host was careless. It has nothing to do with the system." The woman was infuriated. She smashed the expensive tea set on the tea table with a sinister expression. "Xianxia, Wang Huiyun, this couple is really my bane," the woman said angrily, her cheeks flushed. "If I had known that Xianxia would do this, I would have imprisoned Wang Huiyun's soul back then so that she wouldn't be able to rest in peace even after death." The system remained silent. The woman was an outsider who had transmigrated from another world. However, she did not take over the body after transmigrating. This was because Wang Huiyun's soul was still in the body, and this soul was very strong. She had no way of taking over the body of the original Wang Huiyun. It was only when Wang Huiyun gave birth that her body and soul gradually weakened. With the help of the system, she seized the opportunity to take control of the body. Although Wang Huiyun was a married woman, her looks and family background were top-notch. She was a fair, rich and beautiful woman, and she even married a tall, rich and handsome man. She really thought that her luck had changed and she had activated her winner mode. Who knew that Xianxia would have a murderous intent towards her? Moreover, there was a troublesome fraud who had interfered and awakened the sleeping soul of Wang Huiyun. After this woman woke up, she fought with her for control of the body, causing her to suffer a lot. Later on, the woman changed her body and returned the original body to Wang Huiyun. She had wanted to torture her to vent her anger, but she did not expect that this woman's temper would be so fierce that she directly begged for death. She got off lightly. Otherwise, she would definitely anger Xianxia again. After a while, the woman calmed down a little. Thinking of how scary Xianxia was, the woman was extremely nervous and involuntarily clenched her fists. "System, how many popularity points do I have left?" The system said dutifully, 97. 63 million popularity points. "Do you want to redeem a life substitution puppet?" The woman scratched her head in frustration. "Against that lunatic Xianxia, no matter how many life substitution puppets I have, they won't be enough for him to kill." The host can learn martial arts. The system's store has the top martial arts from various martial arts dimensions. What's the use of martial arts secret manuals? You won't be able to beat Xianxia even if you sharpen your spear at the last minute. Moreover, practicing martial arts will deform your body. Who wants to suffer that kind of pain? Don't you have anything here that can be learned quickly? The woman scoffed and started to flip through the system's store. She had thought of learning it herself, but after trying the skill books sold by the system, she was unwilling to learn it manually. Why would she waste so much time learning something that could be done with a skill book? Only a fool would do that. The system dutifully pulled out what the woman wanted. The dazzling skill books were dazzling. They were all martial arts secret manuals that the woman was familiar with. 9 Yang Divine Skill, 9 Yin Manual, I Jing Scripture Minor Phaseless Skill, Tianshan Plum Snapping Hand, 8 Desolation and 6 Directions Technique. There were also countless orange martial arts skill books that were not famous, but were of the same grade. However, all of these top-notch orange skill books had one thing in common. They were expensive. 10 million popularity points. Why don't you just rob a bank? The woman gritted her teeth in anger, but she knew that the system would not give in. She was just complaining that the system was selling things at too high a price. She bought a skill book of the 9 Yin Manual, a skill book of the Wave-like Subtle Steps, a skill book of the Jade Female Sword Art, and a skill book of the Left and Right Interfighting Technique. With the Left and Right Interfighting Technique, one person would be able to perform the harmonious dual swords with great power. The 3 skill books and 1 supplementary skill book cost her a total of 35 million popularity points. Looking at the plummeting numbers in her account, her heart ached terribly. However, she knew that if she did not strengthen herself, Xianxia would make a comeback. She slapped the cover of the skill book 4 times in a row. The orange quality skill book turned into a golden light and melted into her body. In just a moment, she knew that she had mastered the top-notch martial arts. Wave-like Subtle Steps was performed, and her figure was as ethereal as a fairy. After standing still, she looked at herself and muttered to herself, "This money was well spent. When I transmigrate back, let's see who dares to bully me. Those bitches that are cheap to the bone, I'll tear them apart one by one." Chapter 680. The system remained silent and did not respond. It was boring to be alone. She would get bored after a few rounds of martial arts. Sitting on the sofa and hugging a soft and comfortable pillow, the woman asked the system, "Are there any missions now?" After a while, the system replied, "Yes." A viewer named Butterfly's Tears of Sorrow posted a mission for 99 luxurious private yachts. Another viewer named It's Not My Fault for Loving You posted a mission for 88 aircraft carriers. The woman's eyes lit up and she quickly opened the mission list. A luxurious private yacht was equivalent to 1,000 popularity points, while an aircraft carrier was equivalent to 10,000 popularity points. She had just spent a large sum of popularity points, so she had to make the most of it. The contents of the two missions were almost the same. The woman could not help but frown. These men with brains. The first mission was to have a night with her in her queen's dress. The second was to have a night with the emperor's concubine. The system's voice said calmly, "Separated by a dimension, the viewers are not stingy with their evil intentions. Anyway, no one will know their true colors. Who wouldn't want to spend a small sum of money and enjoy the treatment of an emperor? Host, do you accept the mission?" The woman snorted and said decisively, "Of course I do. Why wouldn't I? I'm really short on money now. Let's follow the old rules." Just as the system said, separated by a dimension, strangers would not deliberately hide their true nature and evil intentions. Her live streaming room had been upgraded to level 6 and could currently accommodate 700,000 viewers. When the live streaming room was upgraded to level 6, the system had another function. It could allow viewers from another dimension to experience sensory pleasure that was infinitely close to reality in their dreams. At first, the viewers were willing to pay for her live streaming with other men. They would not lose anything anyway. Later, when they found out that the live streaming room had this function, the viewers' demands became more explicit. However, she would not do it herself. Who knew if the viewers were humans or dogs? She was not a prostitute. However, the viewers were her bread and butter. She could not simply go against them, so she thought of another way. She used the palace maid beside her as her substitute. After all, she had placed a loyalty talisman on the palace maid, so she would not betray her. Piske, if only the loyalty talisman was effective on Xianxia. Damn it. She had tried to cast a loyalty talisman on Xianxia, but she didn't know what he had on him and the loyalty talisman was destroyed. Xianxia has been practicing martial arts since he was young. He can be considered a grandmaster. Ordinary loyalty talismans won't work on him. The system poured a bucket of cold water on her. The woman curled her lips and said, Then why didn't you give me the unusual loyalty talisman?" "Yes, but you can't afford it," the system said. The woman was astonished and asked it, "There really is. Let me see. Grade 9 loyalty talisman, orange quality." According to their quality, they were divided into gray, white, green, blue, purple and orange. Orange was the highest grade and the most expensive. 25 million points. Faster thief. Why don't you just rob someone? The woman was exasperated. She asked indignantly, "This grade 9 loyalty talisman can make Xianxia submit? No, he's just a small fry. Using the grade 9 loyalty talisman won't kill him." The system laughed. "This grade 9 loyalty talisman has an 80% chance of making the Son of Providence submit to you." The woman's heart trembled. She blurted out, "Including Emperor Qin?" "Including her." The woman secretly gritted her teeth. She seemed to be hesitating whether to buy it or not. "But I don't even know who Emperor Qin is. It's useless even if I buy it." The woman said gloomily, "That old man Lucy is so annoying. I've received a lot of fake news, but there's still no news of Emperor Chen's whereabouts. In order to fit in with history, I even sacrificed that useless daughter of mine. Who knew that she would be so useless and die so worthless?" Lu Shi had intentionally led her mistress Lu Huan away. She had thought that Lu Shi had no daughter and that Lu Huan, the mistress's daughter in name, had a chance to become Emperor Chen. She had not expected that she would be so useless. "Gu Min, that damned bitch," the woman suddenly muttered. The system knew why she was cursing Gu Min, who had passed away a long time ago. That year, when the woman found out that Gu Min was a transmigrator, she first used the soul-searching technique on Gu Min to prevent her from ruining things. After carefully looking through Gu Min's memories, she unexpectedly found out that Gu Min actually came from the future of this plane. The current child of fortune was Lu Shi's daughter, the future Emperor Chen of the Jiang dynasty. However, with the addition of Gu Min and the hindrance of Lu Shi, the identity of Emperor Chen became complicated and confusing. The woman had been searching for many years, but there had been no progress. If it wasn't for Gu Min shamelessly stealing her own brother-in-law, I wouldn't have been unable to find out who Emperor Chen is. Faster thief. The system whispered bewitchingly, actually it's not that difficult. As long as you are willing to pay the price, you can buy all kinds of information. The woman was exasperated. So many points of popularity. You're going to overdraft me. The system said, it's not expensive at all. You can buy any piece of information with 30 million points of popularity. The woman hesitated for a long time. She thought of Emperor Chen, who would unify the Central Plains in the future. He felt like she was sitting on pins and needles. There was no special reason for her to be so against Emperor Chen. It was only because he threatened her. The system had said that if Emperor Chen lived and unified the universe, she would die. Because of the so-called law of the plane, only one of them could live. If one did not look out for oneself, heaven and earth would destroy them. Compared to Emperor Chen, of course, she would let that dog Emperor Chen die. On the other hand, as long as she reached the peak of her live-streaming level, she could make a wish and transmigrate back. She could even bring everything she had obtained from the system. Her current goal was to upgrade her live-streaming room to level 7. Once it reached level 7, she would need to spend another billion points of popularity to open up a channel to the cultivation plane. If the cultivators there rewarded her with elixirs, cultivation techniques, rare herbs, or even celestial beasts, she would be able to receive the real thing. With these, she would become an immortal cultivator. When she transmigrated back, wouldn't she be able to turn the world upside down? It was a pity that the nearly 100 million points of popularity that she had painstakingly accumulated through her live streaming and completing missions were going to be squandered again. However, if she spent 25 million points of popularity to buy the grade 9 loyalty talisman and 30 million points of popularity to buy information about Emperor Chen, she would be able to completely eliminate this hidden danger. Then she would be able to enjoy her transmigration life in peace. She could start live streaming without any worries and earn popularity points. She gritted her teeth and said, buy. Buy them all. I want to know who that dog of a emperor is. After a while, a letter appeared in front of her. It was an orange talisman in a jade box. The texture of the letter was like fine mutton fat jade, and there were 2 large golden words written on it. Lu Shi. The woman was shocked. The next moment her expression turned ferocious. D***M. You're saying that Lu Shi's son Lu Shi is a woman? The system seemed to be surprised as well. After a while it said, the data doesn't lie. Lu Shi is the son of Providence, the historical Emperor Chen. The woman was even more furious. She smashed the things in the living room like a madwoman. Who could remain calm when they found out that the person they had ignored for years was the target? Chapter 681. If one were to ask who the lady hated the most, Lu Shi was undoubtedly number 1, followed by Gu Min, and lastly the thorn in her side, Emperor Chen. She had spent 30 million popularity points to buy news about Emperor Chen, only to receive such an answer. How could she not be angry? After a while, the lady had smashed everything in the living room that could be smashed. Only then did her anger subside. Her hair was a mess and her clothes were disheveled. She lay on the sofa, panting slightly to calm the raging fire in her chest. Lu Shi and Gu Min. 2 bitches. She ground her molars in anger, her beautiful face carrying a frightening malevolence. Especially this Gu Min. An ordinary transmigrator, tormenting the paper workshop and making bricks and glass to make money. Did they think she couldn't tell that she had used such a crappy method in a transmigration novel? She was already dead, but she still left behind such a big problem. How annoying. Of course, despite her anger, she wouldn't be jealous. What was the point of Gu Min remembering these techniques after transmigrating? She had the system as a cheat. She was much better than that ugly transmigrator, Gu Min. As long as she accumulated enough points, what technique could she not have? Just from her cheat, It was obvious who was the one favored by the heavens. Everything she obtained in this world would become her wealth when she transmigrated back. That was why she was secretly accumulating money. She found out that there were traces of glass in the northern borderline. They were being sold at exorbitant prices. An ordinary piece of low-quality glass cost tens of thousands of strings of coins. She gritted her teeth and decided to exchange for the glass firing technique from the system. She didn't expect it to cost 45 million popularity points. The system told her that this technique wasn't worth much in her eyes, but it was epoch-making for this plane. The glass firing technique had already surpassed the technological level of this era. That was why it was so expensive. If she thought it was too expensive, she didn't have to buy it. In the end, she bought it. She had to look at this business from the perspective of development. In order to make a lot of money, she gave the technique to her confidants and had them burn the glass to sell. At first, she made a lot of money. However, she wasn't thorough and leaked the news. The huge profits attracted the jealousy of the other aristocratic families. She gave her confidants a loyalty talisman, but the craftsmen in the kiln didn't. These craftsmen became a breakthrough. The core glass firing technique was leaked, and the merchants who followed suit were like carps crossing the river. Within Zhongzhou, from top to bottom, there was a devilish trend of producing glass and making a lot of money. She was dreaming in the palace, completely unaware of the situation outside. When she found out that she had used 45 million popularity points to exchange for the glass firing technique, she had only earned less than 1 million strings of coins. She was so angry that she almost vomited blood and hated Gumin even more. As for the consequences that this bubble economy brought to the people, she did not care at all. Letting Gumin die like this is really letting her off easy. The woman looked down at the grade 9 loyalty talisman in her hand and a cold light flashed in her eyes. System, what's the level of my strength now? It's equivalent to the level of this world's grandmasters, and its battle prowess is about the same as the supreme of martial arts from before. The woman's face lit up. According to the system, her martial prowess was already top-notch. Just a moment ago he had felt that it was a waste of popularity points, but now he felt that it was worth it. Would she be afraid of Xianxia now that she was at the level of a grandmaster? Why would he be afraid of a mere Lushi? The woman gritted her teeth and said, "Then do you know where that little bastard Lushi is now?" The system asked in return, "Host, why are you asking this question?" She snorted and sneered. "I spent a huge amount of popularity points to exchange for the grade 9 loyalty talisman to buy information about her. Of course, it's to make trouble for her. Otherwise, what's the use of exchanging for it? There's only one and there's only one chance. Of course, I'll only feel at ease if I do it myself." The system understood. "Host, are you planning to leave the palace? If you leave, what about the Empress in the palace?" The woman's heart wavered. She had spent too much effort on the position of Empress. How could she be willing to give it up just like that? Firstly, it was not easy to obtain the position of Empress. How long had she been planning for this? Secondly, the Empress could enjoy the wealth of Zhongzhou first. Using this identity, she had secretly amassed countless precious treasures over the years. When she transmigrated back, any one of them would be a treasure worth millions. It would allow her to go from a penniless small-time broadcaster to a Ms. Perfect with countless treasures. How could she be willing to abandon this money tree? Even if she had to abandon it, it would not be now. She secretly gritted her teeth, thinking about how to solve this matter perfectly. Thirdly, the audience in the live streaming room were mostly otakus who loved beauties. A small portion of them were tycoons who were not stingy with their money. They were willing to spend money and were generous. They often issued various tasks, putting themselves in the shoes of the emperor and spending time with the concubines in the harem. If she lost the identity of Empress, she would lose a portion of her tycoon audience. It would be a great loss. However, if she did not leave the Zhongzhou palace, she would not feel at ease handing over the grade 9 loyalty talisman to others. The plan now. The woman's eyes narrowed and a plan formed in her mind. Didn't Xianxia sneak attack me and make me lose consciousness due to excessive blood loss? How about this? Get a substitute puppet to replace me and I'll use it to escape the palace. The system's products must be of the highest quality. The substitute puppet you get will definitely not let anyone know that something is wrong. Even though she was sucking up to the system was still heartless. 5 million points of popularity, no bargaining. The woman was so angry that she pouted, but in the end she still agreed angrily. She muttered to herself, "Scammer Zhou profiteer." On the other side, Xiaqian's assassination had failed. He did not delay and decisively chose to retreat. After paying a small price, Xiaqian successfully shook off his pursuers. He leaped into the cold palace and met up with a middle-aged palace maid. Seeing Xiaqian's gloomy and unwilling expression, the palace maid knew that Xiaqian's assassination had failed. He could not help but sigh. "Mr. Xia, please follow me." The palace maid's face was covered in wrinkles, and she looked older than her actual age. Xiaqian coughed softly, aggravating his injuries. His face was as pale as snow. "Sorry for the trouble." The palace maid was dressed in the lowest grade of palace maid attire, but she had a calm demeanor and an extraordinary bearing. She walked without making a sound. Even though she was accompanied by an assassin who had barged into the palace, she did not panic and helped Xiaqian send away the guards who were searching the palace. After doing this, the palace maid loaded him into a clean bucket of swill and sent him out of the palace that night. The swill cart left the palace. Along the way, Xiaqian changed cars and hid in a large family's dimly lit house. "Looks like you didn't kill that witch." Xiaqian was fiddling with bottles and jars, frowning as he applied medicine to himself. Chapter 682. Xianxia, you said she's a witch, so of course she knows some sorcery. How can a mere mortal take her life so easily? This witch is indeed strange. She's clearly not trained in martial arts, but not only could she dodge my killer move, but she was also evenly matched with me. A middle-aged man in a black robe stood outside the door. Due to his good health, he looked 2 years younger than Xiaqian. "I can't rest easy if I don't kill this witch." The middle-aged man known as Xianxia walked into the room and sat not far from Xiaqian. His thin face flashed with gloom. The man's surname was Wan and his name was Xian. He was a respected scholar of his time and a famous scholar. Xiaqian scoffed. "What a coincidence, I thought so too. This witch's methods are evil and a mortal might not be able to kill her. She's also hiding in the palace and security is tight. After what happened today, she'll be even more careful. It'll be difficult to kill her next time." Wan Xian clenched his fists and his eyes were filled with despair. This witch has immortal methods? How could a mortal fight against a demon immortal? This witch had destroyed his family. Was there no one who could deal with her? 3 or 4 years ago, Wan Xian's daughter was only 15 years old, just of marriageable age. That year, his daughter went to the temple to pray for her family, but she accidentally lost a handkerchief. Unfortunately, it was picked up by a hoodlum. Not only did he pick it up, this ruffian even went around announcing that this handkerchief was given to him by a certain family's wife. Everyone thought that his daughter had an illicit relationship with this ruffian, and that the originally arranged marriage was ruined, and the husband's family avoided him at all costs. The inflexible elder felt humiliated, and while he was not at home, he brought a group of people to drown his daughter. He called it, using death to prove his daughter's innocence, protect her chastity and protect the Wan clan's reputation. Not only that, even Wan Xian's younger sister, who was married and left home, was also drowned. In one night he had lost 2 of his most beloved family members. In his anger, Wan Xian not only hated the Wan clan, but also the source of all this, the Zhou Empress. If it weren't for this woman's mischief and that bullshit for self-accomplishment classics for women, would his daughter and sister have lost their lives because of this? He had never believed in these supernatural theories, but he had no choice but to believe in someone that even Xiaqian could not kill. Xiaqian sneered. Even if the demoness has some tricks up her sleeves, it's still a demonic trick. Immortals? How could that wicked woman, who could be a husband to any man, be qualified to use this word? Wan Xian calmed himself down and asked, "Xiaohe, what should we do now?" Wan Xian and Xiaqian had used their connections and made meticulous arrangements. This had given Xiaqian the opportunity to infiltrate the Celestial Phoenix Palace and assassinate the Empress. Now that the assassination had failed, Wan Xian felt that if the Emperor sincerely pursued the matter, he wouldn't be able to hide it for long. Sooner or later they would be found out. Before the Emperor could react, they had to make preparations to escape. If he continued to stay in Zhongzhou, sooner or later he would be caught and chopped into pieces. Xiaqian paused in the act of bandaging his wound as if he was deep in thought. He said, "The only thing we can do now is to protect ourselves before making any other plans." If we continue to stay in Zhongzhou, we will die sooner or later. We might as well escape to another country. Nanxing is in the midst of war and we can't even protect ourselves. It's not wise to go there. Beiyuan and Xichang are too far away, and these two countries have good relations with Zhongzhou. Going there would be suicide. Looking at it now, Dongqing is safer. Lu Zhongqing's son is promising. Both father and son grew up drinking ink and they have a deep hatred for the demonists. Relying on them should be a good choice. Wan Xian listened carefully and agreed without hesitation. I'll pack my belongings and leave at night. Xiaqian grabbed Wan Xian's sleeve to stop him from acting foolishly. He wasn't a homebody like Wan Xian. He was very experienced. Not now. The timing is too sensitive. Stay calm and wait for a day or two. The Empress has just been assassinated. If you pack your belongings and prepare to move, wouldn't that be a confession? Do what you need to do these 2 days. Don't give yourself away. Wan Xian had no choice but to listen to Xiaqian's advice. Xiaqian asked as he put on his clothes and slowly fastened his belt. If you leave, what will happen to the Wan family? Wan Xian's face darkened and he sneered. It's none of my business. I'll leave it to fate. They owe me after all. Wan Xian lost his wife at a young age. He originally wanted to remarry for his daughter. After all, a daughter's upbringing couldn't be separated from her mistress. But coincidentally, his younger sister had a conflict with her husband's family and left. He simply asked his younger sister to help him raise his daughter. He gave up on the idea of remarrying and devoted himself to learning, slowly making a name for himself. Not only did he befriend many famous people, but he also had some achievements in the officialdom and brought glory to the Wan family. To put it bluntly, Wan Xian's contribution was 80% due to the Wan family's prestige in Zhongzhou. However, not only was the Wan family not grateful, but they also took advantage of him and took advantage of him. In the end, they used the excuse of preserving their chastity and protecting their family's reputation to drown Wan Xian's two most important family members. If not for the hatred in his heart, he probably wouldn't have been able to withstand the successive blows and would have died long ago. Implicating the Wan family? This was what they owed him and they had to repay him sooner or later. Xiaqian didn't say much. This was Wan Xian's private matter and he couldn't interfere. 2 days later, the imperial city was on high alert, and the search area was further expanded. Seeing this, Xiaqian asked Wan Xian to get ready to move. At this moment, Wan Xian's connections played an important role. Not long after, the wheels of the carriage slowly rolled in the direction of Dongqing, leaving the imperial city far behind. Wan Xian looked back with a regretful expression. We've already left the imperial city. I guess we'll never return in this lifetime. He was over 40 years old and was considered half a foot in the grave. Now he had to bear the pain of leaving his homeland. If not for that wicked woman, he wouldn't have been reduced to the state of a stray dog. Xiaqian's injuries hadn't healed and he couldn't ride a horse, so he could only sit in the carriage. Hearing his old friend Wan Xian's lament, he sneered. If you can live longer, you might be able to return. Wan Xian looked at him in surprise. Xiaqian said, look at the situation in Zhongzhou. It's just a second Dongqing. The emperor was incompetent and favored the demon empress. He allowed those who didn't do anything to exploit the people and fill their own pockets. He didn't care about the people's livelihood at all. The struggle in the court was getting more and more intense. How many innocent people became cannon fodder in the fight between the gods? As for the influential aristocratic families in Zhongzhou, they were even more laughable. Everyone had high positions and generous salaries, and half of the court's power was in their hands. Financially, they controlled the mountains and swamps, seized large tracts of land and tenants, and avoided paying taxes. On the other hand, they exploited the people. In such a comfortable environment, a large number of aristocratic families who indulged in leisure and debauchery were born. They held power but didn't care about government affairs. Could Zhongzhou still be saved in such a state? They would be doomed. Wan Xian lowered his eyes and pondered. Xiaqian said, let's take one step at a time. If Zhongzhou is in chaos, it might be our best opportunity. That wicked woman was fearless, largely because she was the Empress of Zhongzhou. The entire country was her backer. If Zhongzhou was gone, it would be much easier to deal with that wicked woman. Chapter 683. The area near the Huangshui River was named Huangshui County after its tributary. It was located at the border of Qinzhou. Ever since the imperial family issued an edict to summon the heroes of the world to defend the king and fight against the traitors, troops from all over the country responded to the call and gathered here. They set up camp near Huangshui County. The camp stretched for more than 200 miles. It was a magnificent sight. From the governor to the county magistrate, there were no less than 20 people from all over the country. There were more than 400,000 troops gathered. Prince Xianxia was so upset that he couldn't even sleep well these days. Who knew there would be so many forces that responded to the call for help? Where did these people come from? They were about to invade Qinzhou. The Meng family of Zhou cooperated with him from the inside and the outside. The situation was good. Who knew that his brother would shamelessly issue an edict to rescue the king and summon forces from all over the country? What was this equivalent to? This was supposed to be a private matter between the two brothers. No matter how ugly the fight was, it was still a family matter. But his brother couldn't beat him, so he shamelessly sat on the ground and cried like a rascal. He pretended to be pitiful and called a group of reinforcements to help him fight. But one mustn't wash one's dirty linen in public. His brother made it known to the whole world. It was really embarrassing, too embarrassing. Prince Xianxia ordered the scouts to continue scouting. There were already as many as 400,000 reinforcements in Huangshui County. Quickly invite County Chief Meng over to discuss. Prince Xianxia was so worried that his hair was about to fall off. After not seeing him for a while, he had lost a lot of weight. He didn't know why he was so unlucky. Every time his luck was about to take a turn for the better, he would be beaten back to his original state. Not long after, the soldiers carefully invited a middle-aged man with a gloomy face and low-key clothes. When Prince Xianxia saw him, his eyes lit up as if he had seen his savior or second parent. The middle-aged man looked good. He had a neatly trimmed beard and a pair of hawk-like eyes that were dark and sinister. When he looked at people with those eyes, there was a gloomy look in his eyes that made people very unhappy. As soon as he came over, the middle-aged man asked in a gloomy tone, "Your Highness, why are you so anxious?" Prince Xianxia suppressed the unhappiness in his heart and smiled helplessly. How can this king not be anxious? Those rebels and traitors have gathered at the Huang River, and they have as many as 400,000 soldiers. If they work together with the remaining soldiers in Qinzhou and surround us, then I won't be able to escape even if I have wings. Mister, do you think this prince can still keep his cool? The middle-aged man was the leader of the Mengs in Zhangzhou, Meng Zhan, the ex-husband of Lu Shi's stepwife. He heard Prince Xianxia's heartfelt words and sneered coldly. They're just a bunch of unruly people with ulterior motives. Your Highness doesn't need to take them to heart. Now, as long as they did not make a move, they would collapse on their own. Back then, when Dongqing, Zhongzhao, Beiyuan, and Xichang assisted Nanxing to fight against Nanman together, didn't the four factions of Nanman also fight and retreat at the same time, allowing the internal strife of the four countries to occur, which eventually led to the collapse of the alliance of the four countries? Your Highness might as well sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight against this group of forces that are here to rescue the emperor. This bunch of unorthodox people will sooner or later have internal strife. Upon hearing this, Prince Xianxia's anxious heart calmed down a little. But when he thought of the magnificent barracks that stretched for more than 200 miles, his heart still trembled involuntarily. No matter how reasonable Meng Zhan's words were, he was still worried. Meng Zhan furrowed his brows in disgust, but he could not show this emotion verbally. Your Highness, please don't worry. Even if I'm not thinking for your Highness, I have to think for the Meng family. Now the Meng family and your Highness are in the same boat. If your Highness is safe, the Meng family can advance further. What's more, Lu Shi's family is still alive and kicking. No matter what, I won't die before him. The hatred of killing his son was absolutely irreconcilable. He wanted to cut off Lu Shi's head with his own hands and use the flesh and blood of Lu Shi's son as a sacrifice to his son Meng Liang's spirit in heaven. In order to achieve this goal, Meng Zhan was betting on Prince Xianxia. He could only win, not lose. Sending 400,000 troops to rescue the emperor was indeed tricky, but each of these forces had their own plans, so it was not impossible to defeat them one by one. As long as Prince Xianxia listened to his arrangements, he could guarantee that the Dongqing royal family would not survive past this spring. Hearing Meng Zhan's guarantee, Prince Xianxia finally felt relieved. On the other side in the Huangshui barracks, the cold wind whistled and the flags fluttered. The barracks seemed to be connected, but in fact they protected each other. The layout was also different. Huang Song had arrived at Huangshui County half a month ago and set up camp. He was Lu Shi's neighbor and he visited every few days. Seeing Huang Song's attentive manner of visiting, Lu Shi would have thought that he had entered the wrong place if it were not for the fact that he was in the barracks surrounded by soldiers in armor and full of murderous intent. On this day Huang Song finished training and came to visit again. Lu Shi was holding a hot pot to keep himself warm. Chapter 684. Lu Shi leaned against the table and smiled. What you're talking about is indeed a hidden danger, but who would be willing to stand up for it? If they work together, not only will the traitor Prince Changshu tremble in fear, but even the emperor in Qinzhou will not be able to eat and sleep in peace. Moreover, each hero has his own pride and no one can be completely convinced by another. Huang Song had brought Qing Jing over to find Lu Shi with two ideas. One was to cooperate with Lu Shi and elect a reputable leader who could control the situation. The other was to make Lu Shi the leader and lead the troops to fight it out with Prince Changshu. If it was the former, Lu Shi wouldn't mind joining in the fun. If it was the latter, he could only lament that the younger generation were all black-hearted. Even an old man had to be black-hearted. Wouldn't the conscience of the younger generation hurt? You're right, Governor, but if we shelve this matter, the alliance will fall apart sooner or later. As Huang Song's spokesperson, Qing Jing's words represented Huang Song's opinion. If it was inconvenient for Huang Song to say something, Qing Jing could help him say it. My lord intends to propose the election of the alliance leader at the alliance meeting in 2 days. However, my lord is afraid that his own people will speak lightly, and hopes that Governor Lu can say a few words on his behalf. Lu Shi frowned. He wasn't here to instigate him to fight for the leader. He wouldn't mind if it was just a few words from the side. Anyway, he wouldn't lose anything. He could just treat it as a good deed. But he was a little worried. He didn't know who Huang Song's target for the leader was. If it was Lu Shi himself, he would be in a difficult position as the responder. He would be suspected of being self-directed and boastful. To prevent himself from failing miserably, Lu Shi had to be cautious. He pretended to ask casually, "Does Bogeo have a candidate in mind?" The question was directed at Huang Song, so Qing Jing couldn't answer for him. Fortunately, Huang Song was already prepared. He sat upright at a moderate pace. He said, "Song does have a candidate here. This person is the county chief of Zhou County, Su Bei. What do you think of him, Governor?" Dongqing's territory was divided into 6 states and 21 counties. Each state was divided into 3 counties, and the remaining 3 counties were calculated independently. These 3 commanderies were Hu Commandery, Zhou Commandery, and Hu Commandery. Needless to say, Hu County belonged to the royal family of Dongqing on the surface, but it was secretly in Lu Shi's hands. This was a tacit understanding among others. As for Zhou County, from the previous dynasty until now, this place was equivalent to the headquarters of the Su family, similar to the relationship between the Meng family and Songzhou. The question was, who was this Su Bei of the Su family? At the mention of this young fellow, others might be a little dumbfounded. However, at the mention of Su Bei's ancestor, there was no one in the 5 countries who did not know of him. She was one of the meritorious deeds of the founding of the great Xia dynasty. She was as famous as the ancestor of the Meng family, Meng Jing. After his death, he was conferred the title of Marquis of Inner Pass and was known as Duke Su. Because the Su family was small in number and kept a low profile from the previous dynasty until now, there were very few officials, so society paid very little attention to them. However, they valued quality over quantity. They walked the path of elite soldiers. The Su family had few officials, but each one of them could not be ignored. Nominally, the Su family was not one of the 4 noble families of Dongqing, but in terms of overall strength, they were slightly stronger than them. Su Bei was the eldest legitimate grandson of the Marquis of Guanyi, Duke Su. He was of noble birth and had great strength. Recommending this person to be the alliance leader for the rescue of the emperor was the most suitable choice. However, Lu Shi furrowed his brows in deep thought and hesitated. Recommending Su Bei? Huang Song was stunned and asked him, "Governor, do you think this person is not suitable?" Lu Shi waved his hand and laughed. No. I'm not saying that Su Bei is not good. In fact, this child is not bad. He comes from a good family, has strong military strength and has sufficient prestige. His talent has spread far and wide at a young age. However, Governor Huang seems to have forgotten that other than Su Bei, the Su family has another direct descendant. If we recommend Su Bei and not Su Fei, I'm afraid that these two brothers will not be satisfied and cause internal strife. When that happens, it will not be good. The current head of the Su family was Su Bei's grandfather. This old man was old, but his spirit was hale and hearty. He was already 70 years old, but he still had sharp eyes and ears. One look and you could tell that he would live to 100 years old. He had managed to outlive two legitimate sons. These two legitimate sons each had one son. They were the eldest legitimate grandson, Su Bei, and the second legitimate grandson, Su Niu. In terms of the eldest legitimate son, Su Bei was more legitimate. However, the problem was that the old man from the Su family favored his youngest grandson, Su Fei. He had repeatedly expressed in public that he favored his youngest grandson, saying that his youngest grandson, Su Fei, had the elegance of his younger days. Look at this mess. Because of old grandfather Su's favoritism, the relationship between the two legitimate grandsons was strained. The competition was fierce and there was endless internal strife. To put it bluntly, this was the consequence of not being strict in managing the family and not differentiating between the young and the old. If the family was not stable, how could the world be pacified? From Lu Shi's point of view, no matter which one of them was recommended, they were destined to offend the other. Huang Song was silent. He looked at Lu Shi with an expression that said, "I feel very wronged." "Governor, who do you think is more suitable?" Lu Shi did not speak. Disregarding the two Langjuns from the Su family, the one with the highest status and the most prestige in the alliance was him, Lu Shi. However, this time he was there to watch the show, not to put on an act. He had no intention of competing. Huang Song and Lu Shi answered one-on-one. Qing Jing had been secretly observing Lu Shi. The more he observed, the more his brows furrowed. This matter was fruitless. Lu Shi was an old fox who was immersed in the officialdom. He was very slippery. How could he be easily trapped? On the way back, the two of them wore serious expressions, each with their own thoughts. Huang Song muttered, "This Lu prefecture overseer is very guarded." Qing Jing agreed in his heart. When he directly mentioned Prince Changshuo's conspiracy, Lu Shi's expression did not show the slightest hint of surprise. It was obvious that he was also well aware of it. Lu Shi was well aware of the hidden dangers in the alliance army, but he did not come out and did not easily communicate with others. He had always put on an aloof appearance and kept his mouth shut like a gourd with its mouth sawed off. This showed Lu Shi's attitude. He would not easily fall into the trap. Leader of the alliance army, this position is like a burning iron chair. It's not suitable for anyone to sit on it, but someone has to sit on it. As the saying goes, the death of a fellow Taoist is not the death of a poor Taoist. For an old man like Governor Lu who is immersed in the officialdom, how could he not know the truth? It is also expected that he would not fall into the trap. There is no need to be discouraged, my lord. Qing Jing was not dispirited by this result. Let's go back and discuss it. Huang Song's expression was solemn. If that's the case, then on the day of the alliance meeting, should we still mention the election of the leader? Qing Jing said, "Of course we should mention it. However, my lord, there is no need to suggest a candidate. Let them fight for it." From Qing Jing's point of view, some people could not wait to elect the leader. It was just that they were thin-skinned and were unwilling to speak up. If Huang Song were to speak up, he could invisibly win over a good impression. Of course, there were also people who refused to elect the leader. Huang Song would also attract this group of enemies. Chapter 685. Qing Jing lowered his eyelids in thought, analyzing clearly. If it's not Su Bei, then it's Su Fei. It can't be anyone else. They've brought the most troops, 100,000 elites. They're much better than the loose fishes of the alliance. If the leader of the alliance isn't born among them, I'm afraid they won't be satisfied. If they leave in a fit of pique, the alliance will only exist in name, then will fall into the enemy's trap. 400,000 troops from the alliance sounded majestic, but in reality, half of them were idle people who only knew how to cheer. They were just there to make up the numbers. As for the other half of the elites, the Su brothers made up 60%. If they left, what was the point of rescuing the emperor? Speaking of troops, Huang Song was depressed. Actually, the candidate he favored the most was Liu Xi. Liu Xi was old, had enough prestige, official status, and a good family background. He was definitely more reliable than the two brats from the Su family. However, Liu Xi did not play by the rules. He was the magistrate of Chongzhou, but he only brought 20,000 soldiers with him to rescue the emperor. One had to know that even a young man like Huang Song had brought along 25,000 yuan in assets. Someone asked why Liu Xi brought so few people. Wasn't it embarrassing? Liu Xi smiled and choked the person back. I am the governor of Chongzhou. The safety of the people of Chongzhou is the most important. Chongzhou is a bitterly cold place, bordering the three tribes of the northern borderline. The barbarians of the three tribes eyed the hinterland of Dongqing covetously. If a large number of troops were mobilized to rescue the emperor, the northern borderline would take advantage of the situation and attack the borders of Chongzhou. What would happen? Although rescuing the emperor is important, there are priorities. I think that national defense is the most important and everything else is secondary. Look, this scene was beautiful. Who would dare to mock Liu Xi for having fewer troops? Huang Song and Qing Jing returned to the tent. Feng Ju was buried in his work. Hearing the commotion, he looked up and saw the two enter one after another. Lord and Yumo are back. What's the news? The two shook their heads. Huang Song said, Liu Xi is too cunning. No wonder he used to be the chief of Hu County. He's not easy to deal with. Feng Ju listened to the two's description and frowned in thought. I'm afraid you've forgotten someone. Confronting Liu Xi head-on was asking for trouble. To drag this old fox into the water, there was no need to confront him directly. Who did you forget? Qing Jing asked. Liu Xi. Feng Ju sneered and spat out the name. Huang Song shook his head like a rattle. This won't do. If I drag Liu Xi down with me, this father and son pair will not forgive me. Feng Ju explained, that's not what I meant. Qing Jing frowned. He seemed to understand Feng Ju's plan. You mean if the alliance, or the two Langjuns of the Su family can't compete, they can turn around and support Liu Xi? Feng Ju nodded and said, yes, that's exactly what I meant. If Su Bei and Su Fei are unable to compete, it will definitely affect the unity of the alliance army. When the time comes, the morale of the people will falter and Prince Changsha will have his way. Since that was the case, they might as well let Liu Xi become the alliance leader while they were fighting over it. Although Liu Xi was a district magistrate, he was ambitious. All of Wanzhou was probably in his hands. With just Wanzhou in addition to Chongzhou and Hu County in Liu Xi's hands, what power in Dongqing could go against them? Even if the two Langjuns of the Su family are unwilling, they have no choice but to bow their heads. Huang Song thought about it and agreed that it was a good idea. However, he was a little timid. He shrugged his shoulders and frowned bitterly. I'm afraid that Liu Xi will strangle me. The two of them were fair-weather friends. They hadn't seen each other for many years. After reuniting, they schemed against Liu Xi. He was really afraid that Liu Xi would press him to the ground and beat him up. Feng Ju and Qing Jing looked at Huang Song silently. Their eyes were filled with an unfathomable light. They seemed to sympathize with him, but at the same time they seemed to be embarrassed. My lord, do you dare to be even more timid? The three of them had planned it well. Everything was ready except for Liu Xi's arrival. They never expected that Liu Xi was indeed Liu Xi's biological son. As the father, he had brought 20,000 troops to protect the emperor. As the son, he was even more shameless. He had brought 10,000 troops to watch the show. Liu Xi and Jiang Pingji had the same idea. Anyway, their son, father, would bring more people. They wouldn't force themselves. Of the 10,000 troops that Jiang Pingji had brought, 6,000 were elites. The remaining 4,000 were new soldiers who had only trained for a few days. Their combat power was mediocre. Jiang Pingji finally brought 10,000 troops and finally arrived at the location of the alliance meeting, Huangshui. The sickly Feng Zhen was frozen like a quail. He clung to the carriage and refused to get out. Xianxia sneered at him. Look at how useless you are. Although he said that, Xianxia's actions were very honest. He didn't want to get out of the carriage and ride a horse. Seeing the two men so timid, Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and mocked them indiscriminately. Look at how useless you are. The weather was nice, but the two of them were still huddled in the carriage and refused to get out. They even had to eat in the carriage. Jiang Pingji couldn't stand it anymore. Xianxia said, I'm old. I'm not as vigorous as young people. Feng Zhen said, I'm already half a foot in the grave. Please take pity on me, my lord. Very well, the two strategists had successfully disgusted Jiang Pingji and driven her away. After Jiang Pingji rode away majestically on Little White, Feng Zhen snatched the hot water from Yang Xi's arms. You're fighting with a sick person. Yang Jingrong, you're regressing as you age. Yang Xi wasn't someone who would wait to be captured without putting up a fight. You said you were sick, but now you're full of vigor. Who would believe that you're a sick person? In terms of age, I'm older than you. You have to respect your elders. Then why don't you love the young? Feng Zhen was flustered and exasperated. Listening to the commotion coming from the carriage, Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes in annoyance. Why had she asked Feng Zhen and Yang Xi to follow the army? The two of them were good individually, but when they were put together, they produced a subtle chemical reaction and kept on making noise. The two of them were almost 60 years old together, but they were still so frivolous. While riding on Little White, she scanned the bullet screen in the livestream room, intending to find some fun in it. The idol audience was still the idol audience. The bullet screen was full of fun. Yi Washenmu, it's so boring. I can only watch the two strategists love and kill each other every day to pass the time. Fake mud doll. #cheeks. Billy already has Yang Xi and Feng Zhen's food. You're welcome to try it. Xianxia Li, you evil cults look at people with rotten eyes. I feel that the two of them are walking further and further down the road of clowns. Kei Sang, that's their personalities. If it were Feng Jin Wei Ci or Suku, the atmosphere would probably be cold. Lao Ciji Lianmeng, are you so idle that you need to play CP to pass the time? Speaking of which, when will we arrive at Huangshui? Gui Kai Guo Fengxiu, same question. Let's wait while we knock on the bowl. If they didn't arrive at Huangshui, Yang Xi and Feng Zhen's public image would collapse. Jiang Pingji looked down at the topographic map. According to the directions on it, there was still half a day's journey to Huangshui. After a while, scouts galloped over on horseback. My lord, there are scouts from unknown forces ahead. Chapter 686. This place was very close to the Huangshui River where the alliance meeting was held, so it was normal to run into scouts. After a round of probing, it was indeed a scout from the allied army. With a guide, Jiang Pingji could avoid many detours. My father has arrived? Both parties identified themselves, and the scouts of the alliance came over to pay their respects to Jiang Pingji. The alliance army scout cupped his fists and bowed. Governor Lu has arrived and is setting up camp on the east side of the alliance army's camp. Does Lu Langjun want to go over? Jiang Pingji smiled. Of course I have to go. Please lead the way. As the scouts passed on the news of Jiang Pingji's arrival spread throughout the allied camp. There was a question that many forces were most concerned about. How many soldiers did Lu Shi bring? The answer was, more than 10,000. Everyone was speechless. Lu Shi had brought 20,000 soldiers and horses, and Lu Shi had brought 10,000. The father and son only had 30,000 in total, which was less than 1/10 of the alliance's total military strength. After all, they were a major force in Dongqing. Why did they bring so few people with them? Didn't they look shabby? They couldn't understand, but two of them breathed a sigh of relief. These two were none other than the two Langjuns of Zhe County's Su family, the brothers Su Bei and Su Fei. Although the two of them were cousins, they had been competing with each other since they were young and had almost fought to the point of becoming cross-eyed. The brotherhood was only about face and affection. There was no lack of discerning people in the alliance army. Many of them could already tell that the alliance army was facing a severe test. Many of them had thoughts of electing a leader. Of course, they wanted to elect a leader not to save Dongqing, much less to save the royal family. They only wanted to seek benefits from it. However, no one had the courage to stand out. After all, the bird that sticks out gets shot. Su Bei and Su Fei both had ulterior motives. Not only did they view each other as a thorn in their side and a competitor, they also had their eyes on the Lu family's father and son. He heaved a sigh of relief when he found out that Lu Shi and Lu Shi had only brought 30,000 soldiers with them. With such a small number of troops, they definitely didn't have the qualifications to be the alliance leader, because they couldn't control the situation. After eliminating a formidable opponent, he only needed to guard against Su Fei, Su Bei. Jiang Pingji had yet to arrive at the camp of the alliance army. Naturally, she did not know what strange thoughts others had in their heads. She happily ran to Lu Shi's campsite. Before she arrived, she was splashed with cold water. What? Father only brought 20,000 soldiers and horses? Jiang Pingji was astonished. Yang Si and Feng Zhen, who were wrapped up like penguins, were also astonished. 20,000 soldiers? What was the use of 20,000 soldiers? Were they going to be food for the enemy? On second thought, his lord was even more unsightly. She had only brought 10,000 soldiers with her. It seemed like this pair of father and son had come here just to be bystanders. When Lu Shi heard the news, he was also shocked. In the end, the father and son looked at each other, speechless. Jiang Pingji had brought very few people with her because the situation in Wanzhou was unstable. She was unable to transfer more people. Lu Shi had brought few men with him because Chongzhou was connected to the north borderline. The three tribes of the north borderline had a hard time this winter, and it would be even harder at the start of spring. If too many of their military forces were taken away, it was feared that the three tribes of the north borderline would not care about their lives and gather their troops to invade the south. Although the possibility was small, they still had to guard against it. Therefore, because of various reasons, the father and son became a member of the soy sauce ball. Although their military strength was superior, they were lacking in manpower. Regarding this, the two of them accepted it. It didn't matter if he could stand out or not. What mattered was that he could achieve his goal. No matter what the outcome of this rescue mission was, it was fine as long as it did not affect the fundamental interests of the father and son. Jiang Pingji had just arrived, so she needed to understand the strength of the alliance. Only after doing his homework would he have a clear idea of what was going on. Lu Shi had arrived earlier than her, so he knew more information. He said, "There are a total of 23 alliance troops this time. Among them, the most eye-catching are the two brothers of the Su family, the descendants of the Marquis of Guanyi Su Gong. These two brothers are young and promising. They are good at everything except for their lack of experience. Their prestige still relies on the shadow of their ancestors. In this election of the alliance leader, these two will definitely participate in the fight and fight to the death. Although the title of alliance leader is an empty title, it is very important to them. Only by improving their reputation could they attract more talents to join them. Only then could their influence be further developed. Rather than saying that the position of alliance leader was an empty title, it was better to say that it was a living advertisement that would attract countless viewers. Lanting, do you have any thoughts about the position of alliance leader? Lu Shi asked his daughter. Jiang Pingji shook her head decisively. She said straightforwardly, "I'm here to expand my business and see if I can bring a few people back. I have serious matters to attend to, not to play house with a bunch of children." Election of the alliance leader? Childish. They can elect whoever they want. I just have to do my own thing. I really don't care who the alliance leader is. Anyway, it can't be me. With such a small number of troops, she couldn't compete even if she wanted to. He might as well relax and watch the show. Lu Shi's expression froze. Daughter, does your strategist know that you're speaking so bluntly? Yang Si and Feng Zhen sat to the left and right of Jiang Pingji. They looked down and focused like old monks in meditation. Lu Shi snorted and said, "That's true. No matter how big the ruckus gets, it has nothing to do with us." The election of the alliance leader had nothing to do with them. They were better off watching the drama unfold as bystanders. Jiang Pingji blinked and secretly glanced at the two strategists who were offline. She suddenly said, "Father." Lu Shi was puzzled. "What's the matter?" Jiang Pingji smiled and corrected Lu Shi's faulty wording. "Not father and son, father and daughter." As soon as she said that, Lu Shi was shocked. Yang Si looked as if he couldn't bear to look at it, as if he had seen the end of the world. He raised his hand to his forehead. Feng Zhen's eyes widened in surprise. Then he covered his chest and coughed violently. Damn, he almost choked on his saliva. Lu Shi quickly regained his composure and asked his daughter with his eyes, "Why did you suddenly say that?" Jiang Pingji said, "In my opinion, this alliance meeting is a good opportunity. Can't be dragged on forever." Lu Shi didn't object. He had mentioned to his daughter about recovery, but Jiang Pingji didn't say anything, so he didn't rush her. His daughter obviously had her own ideas. Lu Shi didn't need to interfere. Below, Feng Zhen looked at Lu Shi eagerly, hoping that his lord's words were just a joke. Lu Shi said, "As long as you like it. Back then, I made you dress up as a man and pretend to be your brother. That was because I had no choice. Now that you've grown up and can take responsibility, I'm very relieved. Lanting, what time do you plan to pick so that I can make preparations? Logically speaking, he still had to make up for his daughter's hairpin. Jiang Pingji said, we'll see when the time comes. There's no hurry now. His daughter wasn't in a hurry, so naturally Lucy wasn't in a hurry either. However, there were two strategists here who felt like they were sitting on pins and needles. Fengzhen even had an expression that said, I can't take it anymore, I need my sister to comfort me. How could his lord be a woman? How could she be a woman? My lord. Even the quick-witted Fengzhen had times when he was stuttering. His gaze lingered below Jiang Pingji's chin and above her abdomen. It's flat. Jiang Pingji understood. She glanced at him meaningfully and sneered. Do you want to verify it with your own hands? Fengzhen, the frivolous one, said, Can I? You can. However, I'm afraid that you'll break before you touch it. She glanced at the area 3 inches below Fengzhen's navel with a faint smile. Fengzhen felt a chill down his spine. He almost burst into tears. Chapter 687. Xianxia could not help but sigh when he saw Fengzhen's defeated expression. How could he not know his lord's temperament? He held back his laughter and said, The truth is already in front of you. Why are you still unwilling to accept your fate? I think I can still be saved. Fengzhen imitated Jiang Pingji's words in the past like a salted fish. Xianxia couldn't laugh anymore. No matter how he tried to save her, he could not change the fact that his lord was a woman and not a man. I advise you to accept reality. With Master's temper, she won't tolerate anything. It's too late for you to replace her. Xianxia turned to look at Fengzhen and reminded him. You've always been unrestrained and unrestrained. In the past it was fine. After all, you and I didn't know the Lord's true gender. But now you can't ignore it. The Lord was raised as a man, but she is not a man after all. If the news that Jiang Pingji was a woman was suddenly revealed, no matter how carefree they were, they could not accept it immediately. This news was too shocking. However, Jiang Pingji had given them a heads-up beforehand and given them enough buffer time, so the impact was not great. Fengzhen and Xianxia weren't people who liked to get stuck in a dead end. On the contrary, due to their temperaments, these two people were very receptive. It wasn't that they couldn't accept reality, it was just that the truth destroyed their worldview. However, since she was the master that he had chosen, he had to support her to the end even if he had to kneel down. As Fengzhen listened to Xianxi's words, he felt that something was amiss. There was more to it than meets the eye. Yang Jingrong, what do you mean? Xianxia snorted. I don't mean anything else. I just want to remind you to pay attention to your words and actions. Just now, your conversation with the Lord was very inappropriate. Fengzisher, recall your conversation with the Lord just now. Is it appropriate? If the Lord was a man, it would be fine if you teased him a little. It was harmless and the world would not criticize you. But now, since you know that she is a woman, you should know to avoid arousing suspicion and pay attention to the rules between men and women. Our Lord is still young and her temperament is uncertain. Don't lead a good seedling astray. Fengzhen had a shocked expression on his face. He looked at Xianxia with sympathy in his eyes. We have a responsibility to care for people with cerebral palsy. Fengzhen looked unconvinced. Yang Jingrong, you're wrongly accusing me. Do you think that a playboy who is familiar with the code words of the brothel, who is good at flirting with prostitutes, who drinks like water, and who hums flirtatious songs can be a decent seedling? It had long grown crooked. Even if I lead him astray, it's my Lord who leads the innocent and pure me astray, not the other way around. In terms of skill level, I'm not even as good as my Lord. It was fine to say that he was unrestrained, but he couldn't just throw the blame to him. His private life was indeed not good, but he was not a person without integrity. Was he the one who instigated the Lord to act like a romantic gentleman? Doesn't the person who said this feel a pang of conscience? Xianxia snorted coldly. Even the corners of his eyes were filled with obvious doubts. Fengzhen was filled with anger. He was about the same age as Xianxia and could be considered to be of the same generation. But now Xianxia had grabbed him by the ear and lectured him. Fengzhen was also angry. Yang Jingrong, do you think you're raising a daughter? With Lord's character, why would she need me to teach her? Xianxia was about to retort when Fengzhen quickly said, Don't object to it. According to my understanding of my Lord, If you deliberately emphasize the need to keep a distance between men and women, it will only make her unhappy. You're experienced enough to know the taboo of a person in a superior position. Don't break the taboo. To put it bluntly, whether my lord is a man or a woman, what difference does it make to people like us? Don't be obsessed. He was still a single dog, yet he was acting like a loving father and treating his lord like a daughter. Was there something wrong with Xianxi's brain? Actually, Xianxia just wanted Fengzhen to rein in his attitude, but this fellow just had to turn the tables on him. Xianxia wanted to hit someone when he heard this. You're twisting words and forcing logic. He glared at Fengzhen. Do you think I don't know the taboo that you've mentioned? I'm not asking you to rein in your behavior because I want you to be estranged from my lord or make her unhappy. I'm only thinking about my lord's reputation. Do you understand this painstaking effort? You don't care about your reputation. Do you want to tarnish my lord's reputation after 100 years? How can a ruler not be a ruler and a minister not be a minister? Xianxia was so angry that his balls hurt. He really wanted to press Fengzhen into the snow and make this fellow listen to his lecture. Fengzhen pursed his lips. He really didn't care about her reputation. His lord was also a pragmatic person who didn't care about empty reputations. Seeing his behavior, Xianxia was both angry and amused. Did you study for so many years for nothing? Back then, Emperor Taizu of Xia put Duke Su in an important position, and the relationship between the ruler and his minister was deep. It was originally a beautiful story, but look at how those despicable unofficial histories are written. How many unofficial histories of later generations have fabricated stories to slander their romantic relationship? The Su family of Zhou County has been criticized. It's rumored that they have the royal blood of the Xia dynasty running through their veins. Haven't you heard of it? Back then, Emperor Taizu of Xia was a heroic man, and Duke Su was an extraordinary woman, but they were still criticized and slandered by the world. Now my lord is a woman and most of her ministers are men. The criticism they receive will only be more severe. If you don't want to add a romantic debt to later generations, then go ahead and do it. It's just that you're a prodigal son. Don't implicate my lord and let her be criticized along with you. If you still don't understand, I won't say any more. Fengzhen couldn't refute. He and Xianxia were both people who didn't bother about trifles, but they were different. Fengzhen completely let go of his restraints and didn't care about his image and reputation. Xianxia was the type who was inwardly coquettish and flirted in secret. He was very serious on the surface. Who can control the mouths of the people in the world? Fengzhen felt a little guilty and lacked confidence. Xianxia replied, I can't control the mouths of the people in the world, but I can control your actions and words. I can keep an eye on you at all times. Fengzhen was like a frosted eggplant, dispirited and listless. He didn't know that he would be so unlucky to be partnered with Xianxia. If he had known earlier, he would have rather partnered with Fengjin or Wei Ci. At least they were gentle and easy to deal with. Do you think that the others will be very surprised if they know about this? Xianxia said, I don't know if they will be surprised or not, but they will definitely be shocked. His majestic and heroic lord had turned into a delicate woman in a single night. Who could withstand such a huge shock? She threw the task of setting up camp to the two strategists. Jiang Pingji was a hands-off shopkeeper and had nothing to do. She sat opposite Lu Shi and brewed tea and wine. They asked and answered questions to understand the power of the alliance. As the two of them answered more and more, the audience in the streaming room had a general understanding of the power of the alliance meeting. The more they understood, the more disappointed they were. Huang Shaun, a man of few words, what a pity. I thought the streamer would be in the limelight this time and become the leader of the alliance. This bullet screen represented the thoughts of the majority of the audience. They had already moved their small stools and sat down to watch the streamer carry the entire scene. What happened in the end? The streamer told them that she was going to take a break midway. She sat in the substitute seat and watched a group of young fresh meats fight fiercely. Chapter 688. Pure and kind Zhang Xianxia. I think it's impossible to be the leader. The chances are very small, infinitely close to zero. Who asked the streamer and her father to have such a tacit understanding that both father and daughter had brought a small number of soldiers? A mere 30,000 troops could only ensure that they had a certain amount of authority in the alliance army and would not be reduced to a mere background. It was difficult to control the entire situation. As for the Su brothers, Su Bei and Su Fei, they were like the Yuan brothers from the Three Kingdoms period. They were the true leaders of the alliance army. If they were really talented and not the kind of mediocre people who switched from arrogance to deference and had eyes but failed to see, the possibility of the host father and son being promoted was very small. It was more realistic to daydream about becoming an alliance leader. After all, this was a place where fists did the talking. The Su brothers were very young and inexperienced, but they held great weight in the alliance. As a fan of streamers, many viewers felt that there was a psychological gap, but reality was reality and streamers could not go against the heavens and the earth. Honest and loyal Yi Buxiu. #smokes. Can anyone be the alliance leader? Have you forgotten how big Dongqing's territory is? The host and his son have already occupied 2 states and Hu County, which is similar to a municipality today. They are in the limelight and are feared by others. If they were to fight for the useless chief position, the disadvantages would outweigh the advantages. They might even get themselves killed. What if the alliance army has ulterior motives and secretly forms a small alliance to attack the host father and son? Right now they only had 30,000 soldiers and horses in their hands. They were very weak. Hand speed expert Yuan Zhou. The host's goal isn't to become the leader of the alliance. She's here to recruit talents and promote her business. What's wrong with the alliance leader? It was just an empty title. If it was emperor, it would be worth it for the host to fight for it. There were gains and losses. It was not the best to gain the upper hand and be in the limelight. Little did they know that making a fortune in silence was the way of the king. I prefer to watch a wolf in sheep's clothing. At first, Lu Shi was worried that his daughter would be unhappy, but after talking to her, he realized that she really didn't care about her reputation. The one who has the last laugh is the winner. Jiang Pingji snorted and said calmly, "The process is important, but it's not as important as the result." Wuxia was very pleased. "It's great that you think that way. I'm relieved." Feng Zhen and Yang Xi's working abilities were commendable. Under their direction the camp quickly took shape. The first thing to be done was the commander's tent. As soon as she stepped into her new residence, someone came to visit her. It was an old acquaintance. Jiang Pingji looked at Huang Song and asked him in a familiar tone. "Bogart's camp is nearby?" The young man in front of him was a little longer than he remembered. He looked more muscular, and the immaturity on his face had been slowly worn away by time. The visitor was Huang Song, Jiang Pingji's fair-weather friend. They had a good relationship back in Shangjing. "Yeah, I heard that you're here, so I hurriedly asked people to prepare cooked meat and sake. Let's not go home until we're drunk." Jiang Pingji glanced at the young scholar behind Huang Song. She saw that he was secretly frowning and his expression was slightly displeased. "That's right, it's really a headache to have a lord who won't leave until she's drunk and can't hold her liquor well." Jiang Pingji bluntly exposed Huang Song's lame lie. "Come on, do you think I don't know what you're planning? You knew I was coming, but you just dragged your feet and refused to come. I'm here now because I can't delay any longer. Am I right?" Huang Song's face was bitter, but he did not show any embarrassment at being exposed. "Lu Lanting, your mouth is still so harsh and your words are like knives." Jiang Pingji crossed her arms in front of her chest. "If you don't want me to be harsh, then don't talk like an official in front of me. Tell me the truth." "But the truth is, I felt that your tent hasn't been set up yet, so I didn't want to sit on the ground and eat meat and drink with you. That's why I delayed coming." Huang Song's answer made Qing Jing's frown deepen, and deep wrinkles appeared on his face. "I've told you the truth. You should let me into your tent, right? You're so talkative. Come in." Jiang Pingji glanced at Qing Jing to see his reaction, then welcomed them into the tent. The tent was very simple. There were only mats for people to sit on, and other than that there were no other decorations. The 3 of them sat down. Huang Song asked the guards to set up the table and took out the food from the food box. The cooked meat on the plate had been cut into slices. The slices were still steaming and they did not smell fishy. Jiang Pingji still spoke in a mocking tone. "The alliance troops are stationed at a place with 400,000 people, but we can still eat meat." Huang Song did not understand. He thought that Jiang Pingji was disgusted and he felt rather ashamed. "I should do my best as a host and entertain Brother Lu. It's a pity that the snow hasn't melted yet and the livestock are hiding in their nests. There are no other living creatures for me to eat. When spring comes, the prey will be plump and I'll hunt a few more for Brother Lu." Jing felt the urge to facepalm. It was definitely his illusion that his lord was so silly and adorable. Jiang Pingji could not help but laugh. She knew that Huang Song was trying to be clever, but she did not expose him. That's not what I meant. Bogeo, don't misunderstand. The alliance troops have 400,000 troops. How much food can they eat every day? I thought that if the army stationed here, they would at least be at the level where all the birds would disappear, even if they didn't eat the ground and the roots. Thanks to you I can still eat meat. Huang Song was speechless. Brother Lu's words are reasonable, but the meat you're eating now was secretly reared by me. I'm preparing it for a sumptuous meal when I'm hungry. If it weren't for you I wouldn't have wanted to eat it so early. Look at how good I am to you. I even gave you my secret stash. Jiang Pingji and Huang Song were fair-weather friends. They were not close friends, but they were not strangers either. They had no scruples when they talked at the table. As for Jing, he ate silently, drank silently, and watched the two old drivers drift and race in silence. It felt like the door to a new world had been opened. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Huang Song picked his teeth as if there was no one else around and asked Jiang Pingji, Brother Lu, I heard that you only brought 10,000 troops with you? Isn't that not enough? Jiang Pingji said indifferently, Is 10,000 troops too little? If it's not enough, doesn't my father have 20,000? Huang Song hurriedly waved his hands. There was a hint of probing in his words. I didn't mean that. I'm just thinking about Brother Lu's temperament. He's always liked to join in the fun and be in the limelight. Now, many of Dongqing's heroes and forces have gathered here to prepare for the rescue of the king, kill the rebels and protect the country. This is a good opportunity to make a name for yourself. Brother Lu, don't you want to play big and be in the limelight? The two were fair-weather friends, but their temperaments were compatible and they were quite familiar with each other. When she asked this question, it was 70% probing mixed with 30% concern. Chapter 689. Huang Song nodded as he listened. He obviously believed Jiang Pingji's words. No matter how much he criticized her in his heart, at least he believed her on the surface. Jing, who was beside him, was not so easily fooled. In his opinion, even if Jiang Pingji was not lying, she was not lying. She had conquered Qingde County in half a month. Such swift actions were enough for Jing to view her as a great enemy. After saying this, Jiang Pingji asked him a question. Bogeo, are you interested in the position of alliance leader? Brother Lu, don't laugh at me. How am I worthy of being the alliance leader? Huang Song laughed bitterly, his tone self-deprecating. Jiang Pingji said, Why do you belittle yourself? You are the chief of a county and have tens of thousands of troops under your command. Why not? Why not? Of course not. If he could be the alliance leader with such little qualifications, who knew how many people would fight for him? Although Huang Song was ambitious, he could see reality and his own strength clearly. He did not have that kind of arrogance that was higher than the sky. He knew it was impossible for him to become the alliance leader, but he could find a way to maximize the benefits. I am ashamed. Brother Lu thinks highly of me, but with my meager strength I will only be laughed at by the heroes. The two drank and drank. Because Huang Song was a good talker, the atmosphere did not turn cold. As the conversation went deeper, they began to talk about the various factions within the alliance. Jiang Pingji listened carefully. She had heard a lot from Lu Shi and wanted to dig out more information from Huang Song. Huang Song said, Other than the Su brothers, I think there are two other families worth paying attention to. Which of? Jiang Pingji asked him. Huang Song said, One is the chief of Shanghai County Wumashang. The other is the military chief of Zhangzhou Dongmen County Yang Jian. In my opinion, these two are one of the few pure-hearted forces in the alliance that are willing to protect the emperor. The military chief of Shanghai County Wumashang is second only to the Su brothers. The military chief of Dongmen County Yang Jian has no more than 15,000 troops, but from what I know this is all he has. This shows his sincerity. When Jiang Pingji heard these two names, she seemed to be deep in thought. Wumashang, just from the name I know he is a relative of the royal family. Let's not talk about him. Then who is this Yang Jian? More importantly, Yang Jian was from Zhangzhou's East Gate County. Zhangzhou was Prince Changshuo's fief. Huang Song smiled as he explained, the county chief of Hu County Wumashang is indeed from a branch of the royal family. He can be considered a relative. In terms of seniority, he is the uncle of the emperor and Prince Xianxia. As for Dongmen Commandant Yang Jian, he doesn't have any special background, but I like his temperament. This person's temperament was open-minded and he was heroic and righteous. Although he looked crude and careless, he was actually very meticulous. Zhangzhou was Prince Changshou's fief. It looked rich on the surface, but in reality, it was a chaotic place. Prince Changshou used other reasons to cover up the incidents of water bandits robbing and killing the people, pretending to be peaceful. Only Yang Jian's personality was unyielding and unyielding. It was said that he dared to raise his sword at the age of 17 and led his troops, who were good at swimming, to deal with the water bandits. He fought valiantly and often disregarded life and death. Now that he has made a name for himself, he can be considered a hero. Jiang Pingji pinched her chin. From what you've said, Bogeo seems to like Yang Jian a lot. Huang Song said calmly, of course I want to befriend such a heroic figure. It's just that. At this point, Huang Song's expression darkened. He felt slightly ashamed and didn't continue. Even if he didn't say it, the two people in the tent understood what he meant. There was no point in saying it. However, he didn't know that apart from Jiang Pingji and Qing Jing, there were 150,000 onlookers. These people didn't understand. Blackberry can, I'm confused. What's next? Huangdao can, same question. What's next? Pomelo can, there's nothing more. This damned eunuch. He pretended to be mysterious halfway through his speech. Annoying, annoying, annoying. Jiang Pingji looked at the bullet screen full of eunuch. And there's nothing more. She held back her laughter in pain. Host V, the alliance is meeting here. They are here to suppress Prince Changshou, but this Yang Jian is from Zhangzhou. Zhangzhou is Prince Changshou's fief, so their relationship is more sensitive. If I'm not wrong, Yang Jian should have been declared independent by the alliance. Huang Song wants to befriend him, but the situation doesn't allow it. If he befriends Yang Jian, it's equivalent to making enemies for himself. Huang Song won't do such a thing. After her explanation, the comments on the screen changed again. Wei Wei and, Huang Song is too cowardly. Why worry so much? If he wants to befriend him, then befriend him. Why does he have to avoid arousing suspicion? Su Sui Lionian, I think Huang Song is right. Yang Jian is isolated by the whole group. If he brazenly befriends him, he'll definitely be ostracized by the whole group. He'll even implicate Yang Jian. This doesn't fit Huang Song's character. There are many ways to express goodwill. Huang Song is a smart man. Offering help in times of need is much better than adding icing on the cake. If there's a war, Yang Jian might be thrown out by the alliance's cannon fodder. When that happens, Huang Song can lend a helping hand. This is better than befriending him. Hacker Wen Xiangpian, to the person above, please accept my respect. Hacker Dian Wen Xiangpian, the type of streamer attracts the type of audience. I feel like the average IQ of the streaming room is getting higher and higher. Jiang Pingji was very composed. After so many years, she had long developed the habit of ignoring the bullet screen and not being affected by it. She comforted Huang Song. Bogeo, don't be disappointed. It's fine if you secretly befriend Yang Jian. There's no need to announce it to the world. Wasn't there a saying that went, showing off your love will lead to a quick death? Huang Song didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Who would comfort someone like that? This person's choice of words was still so amusing. It made people laugh and cry. Words that were originally proper, but when they came out of this person's mouth, they always had a strange tint to them. Huang Song said that they wouldn't go home until they were drunk. Jiang Pingji didn't feel bad about it. Anyway, it wasn't her wine. It would be a waste not to drink it. In the end, the tent reeked of alcohol. Huang Song was already paralyzed on the ground like a puddle of mud. His face was burning red and he was delirious. On the other hand, Jiang Pingji's wine jars were no less than Huang Song's. She still looked sober, but her eyes were shimmering with tears. Huang Song hugged the wine jars in a daze. He stammered, he can still drink. Bogeo's alcohol tolerance isn't good. Tell him to drink less in the future. Although the war hasn't started yet, this is still an important military camp. He should remain sober at all times. He shouldn't drink too much to prevent it from affecting his sanity. Jiang Pingji glanced at Qing Jing, whose expression was normal and unchanging. She said in a lazy tone, "Look at how drunk he is. I'll send someone to send him back." What do you think, teacher? Looking at Qing Jing's stature, Jiang Pingji really doubted that he could successfully drag Huang Song back. Qing Jing bowed with his hands in front of his chest. Thank you for your kindness, District Magistrate Liu. I thank you on behalf of my lord. Bogeo and I are good friends. You don't have to be so polite. When she finished speaking, she shouted for the soldiers to support Huang Song and send him back to his own tent. She got up and sent Huang Song and Qing Jing out of the tent. She looked at the few figures in the distance and frowned. Chapter 690. Before he even got close, he could smell the strong scent of alcohol on Jiang Pingji. Why did my lord drink so much? She said, Huang Song is here. If I don't accept the wine that was delivered to my doorstep, wouldn't it be a great loss? Feng Zhen nodded and didn't dwell on this topic. He didn't come to listen to his lord talk about how he had taken advantage of her. My lord, you should quickly go to the drill ground. Han Mei has gotten into an argument with someone. Han Mei got into an argument with someone? She knew every word of this sentence, but when put together she couldn't understand it. Han Mei has such a good temper, why would he get into an argument with someone for no reason? And it even went to the drill ground? Li Yun was known as a little angel. When they heard that he had gotten into an argument, many people's first reaction was that the other party had a nasty mouth and was the one who provoked him first. Although Jiang Pingji wasn't blind, she was still biased towards her own people. Li Yun was the group's favorite. He was equally good-looking as Wei Xiai. If Jiang Pingji wasn't biased towards her own people, would she be biased towards outsiders who bullied them? Feng Zhen didn't seem to be anxious. Obviously, this matter wasn't serious. This can't be explained in a short time. My lord, let's talk as we walk. Feng Zhen was afraid that Li Yun would be at a disadvantage, so he hurried over to ask for help. His lord's combat ability was off the charts. How could ordinary people fight against her? At that moment, Feng Zhen completely forgot that his lord was a girl. When he finally realized it, his expression was a little conflicted. It wasn't that he didn't want to remember his lord's gender, but his lord's actions were too manly. It was too much of an act. Jiang Pingji didn't say much and said, lead the way. The camp hadn't been set up yet and she didn't have a drill ground here. The drill ground that Feng Zhen mentioned was in the camp of another power. Along the way, Jiang Pingji saw that the tents were arranged neatly. The soldiers looked imposing and had the aura of a valiant army. She swept her gaze across and frowned slightly. These people are from the south, right? Look at them, they seem to be good swimmers. Feng Zhen was already familiar with Jiang Pingji's observation skills, so he wasn't surprised. My lord is wise. This is the camp of the military chief of Zhangzhou's Dongmen County. These people are all elite soldiers who are proficient in land and water. I heard that this person has 10,000 elites under him and they are all able to fight in the waves. Once he's in the water, he'll be able to take on 10 opponents at once. When Jiang Pingji heard this, she stopped in her tracks and turned her head to look at Feng Zhen. Don't you know that Yang Jian is being ostracized? Feng Zhen smiled. Becoming enemies is not becoming friends. Outsiders can't find fault with it. Jiang Pingji had some suspicions. Could it be that Feng Zhen had purposely asked Li Yun to scam him? Otherwise, how could it be such a coincidence that they had a conflict with Yang Jian's people? Feng Zhen understood Jiang Pingji's expression and said righteously, My lord, there are very few people in this world who are as open and aboveboard as I am. Why would I deliberately set up a trap to frame others? Even if I had such intentions, I wouldn't have chosen Han Mei. That brat lacked a heart and wasn't suited for this kind of heart-wrenching work. This time it was truly a coincidence. If my lord doesn't believe me, I have nothing to say. Who would believe it? Jiang Pingji whispered to him. I can't believe everything you say, but I can't ignore it either. Tell me, what are you planning? Feng Zhen shamelessly agreed, not feeling the slightest bit ashamed. My lord is participating in the alliance meeting for business and for talents. Business has yet to materialize, but talents should be put on the agenda. Jiang Pingji said, Then tell me, who have you taken a fancy to? Yang Jian has a centurion under his command. His appearance is a little ugly, a little unique. But his appearance isn't a problem. What's more important is that he's an excellent swimmer. I secretly watched him train his troops and discovered that he has a lot of ideas and is quick-witted. His training methods are different from ordinary people and can't be considered mainstream, Plus, his appearance isn't good, so he hasn't been put in an important position. Fengzhen tucked his hands into his sleeves. He was so cold that he wanted to shiver, but he still held on. Seeing this, Jiang Pingji tossed her hot water bottle to him to warm his hands. "You're a man, but you're even more delicate than a young lady." Fengzhen said. "More delicate than a young lady? That depends on who that young lady is." His lord was bold and unrestrained. Was there a man in this world who was more manly than her? After a while, Fengzhen asked her hesitantly, "Would my lord despise someone for being ugly?" If she neglected a talent because of his appearance, Fengzhen was worried that it would incur resentment. Hearing this, Jiang Pingji snorted. "Have I ever despised you?" Fengzhen was speechless. Damn, he couldn't go on like this. "I'm asking a serious question. If my lord doesn't despise that person's ugly appearance, I'll find him for you." Jiang Pingji also answered seriously, "For your lord, those who have limbs, brains and can work are people. Can being good-looking be used to make a living? As for those who are good-looking but are as mentally retarded as 3-year-olds, they're not even worthy of being a pretty face. Speaking of good-looking, who can be more pleasing to the eye than Zixiao? If you think that person is useful, you can try to get in touch with him. But you have to consider Yang Jian's opinion lest you become enemies." For her, appearance had never been a plus. Good-looking people were pleasing to the eye, but if they weren't practical, she would reject them. Beauties who couldn't work and weren't as beautiful as Wei Ci were useless faces to her. They even took up space. With Jiang Pingji's affirmation, Fengzhen calmed down and thought about how to abduct a talent. Jiang Pingji thought of a detail and asked Fengzhen. "Although troop training isn't a secret, not everyone can watch it. How did you sneak into Yang Jian's camp?" If she couldn't sneak into Yang Jian's camp, how could she watch him train his troops? How could she discover talents? Fengzhen casually said, "You know what it means to be a good friend." Jiang Pingji then remembered that Fengzhen was also from Zhangzhou's Anshan County. Anshan County and Dongmen County bordered each other. Fengzhen had no boundaries. Every day he was either drinking in the tavern, gambling in the casino, hugging the courtesans in the brothel, or fooling around with his friends. Therefore Fengzhen had a wide variety of friends. It wasn't strange that he had a member of the Jian tribe among them. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Fengzhen wasn't ashamed of it. Instead he felt proud. He had friends all over the world. Was he afraid? Jiang Pingji crossed her arms. "That's a pity. Just now Huang Song brought Qingjing to visit." Qingjing and Fengzhen were friends. They got to know each other through Wei Ci. Although they hadn't met, they admired each other's talents and appreciated each other's talents. In more modern terms, they were pen pals. They hadn't met in person yet. Hearing Qingjing's name, Fengzhen's expression changed slightly. He said, "He won't run away. There's no hurry to meet him." As they spoke, the two arrived at the drill ground. The edge of the drill ground was surrounded by 3 layers of people. Shouts and shouts could be heard from the crowd, their voices like thunder. "General, defeat him. General is mighty." Chapter 691. Jiang Pingji was about to squeeze in, but Fengzhen was already 1 step ahead of her. He laboriously used his small body to clear a path. "My lord is different from others. How can you allow your precious body to clash with a commoner?" Although Fengzhen was talkative, he took Yang Xi's words to heart. "What precious body? It's just a body made up of flesh and bones. Your lord isn't made of glass. It won't break so easily." Jiang Pingji understood his good intentions, but it was really unnecessary. She was willing to reveal her identity and gender, not to get special treatment. You and Jingrong should also talk about it. There's no need to be so careful. It's uncomfortable. Just do as usual. Fengzhen lowered his eyes and agreed, still using his body to shield her from the others. Only then did he have the extra energy to pay attention to the drill ground. There were 2 familiar faces on the drill ground. One was Li Yun, the other was Dian Yan. Jiang Pingji frowned. Why was Dian Yan here? Was this related to Dian Yan? Fengzhen said, "My lord, you might not believe me when I say this, but they were the ones who tried to poach me first." Jiang Pingji was speechless. Fengzhen explained the whole story. Dian Yan was a good student who was eager to learn. Ever since he joined Jiang Pingji's loving group, he felt the disparity between him and the others. From martial arts to knowledge, he seemed to be seriously biased towards other subjects. On one hand, he studied humbly, and on the other hand, he did not neglect his martial arts. According to his usual practice, he should have practiced martial arts for 2 hours. However, the drill ground had not been cleaned up yet, so he found a secluded place to practice martial arts. He did not expect to be seen by outsiders. That person was one of Yang Jian's subordinates, and he valued talents as much as his life. He felt that Dian Yan was tall and valiant, and seeing that he was wearing a shabby hemp garment with patches on it, he thought that he was a useless soldier. Naturally, he had the idea of recruiting him. Yang Jian's troops were good at fighting on the water. They weren't bad at fighting on land, but that was still their weakness. If Dian Yan joined, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. He had just expressed his intentions when Li Yun, the honest child, came. When that person saw Li Yun's face, it was as if he had suffered a great shock. Without saying anything further, he started to fight. Cat pancakes? Li Yun knew the severity of the situation. This was where the Alliance army was stationed. If he killed anyone, it might cause trouble for his lord. Angel Han Mei's marksmanship was outstanding. Even Jiang Pingji had to take him seriously. Even if he only defended and did not attack, he could still firmly suppress his opponent. The two of them had different mentalities. Li Yun was as calm as water, without any ripples, while his opponent became more anxious and irritable, full of openings. Li Yun found an opportunity and knocked his opponent's weapon away. He pierced the man's armpit with his long spear and tied his hands behind his back. At that moment, the man's personal guards had also called for reinforcements. The one leading them was none other than the commandant of Dongmen Prefecture, Yang Jian. As soon as he saw Li Yun's face, even Yang Jian, who was already middle-aged, felt a moment of fear. He blurted, "What's your relationship with Xianxia? Master's old enemy?" Li Yun's heart skipped a beat. He lowered his head and glanced at his opponent, who was unwilling to budge. He pressed the center of gravity of the spear in his hand down and firmly restrained his opponent. "Xianxia is my master." Yang Jian was a middle-aged man in his 40s. His body was strong and well-built, and his facial features were well-defined. His eyes were clear and bright, as if they were flowing with golden light. One look and you could tell that he was a righteous and awe-inspiring man. He was tall, and when he took a step, his stride was half the size of a normal person's. After listening to Li Yun's explanation, he asked, "You're not biological father and son?" Li Yun pursed his lips, his eyes fixed on Yang Jian. He had heard similar words from his lord's father, Lu Shi. Lu Shi had also said that he was Xiaqian's biological son. "Yun and my master are so similar?" Li Yun was curious. Yang Jian replied, "You and him are practically carved from the same mold. The resemblance is uncanny." It wasn't entirely accurate to say that they were identical. Xiaqian's appearance leaned towards being tough. Even though he was dressed in a scholarly robe, he still exuded the aura of a martial artist. Li Yun's appearance was more like a gentler version of Xiaqian. He was handsome without peer, gentle without losing his masculinity. It was more in line with the aesthetics of ordinary people. "You're familiar with my master?" Li Yun still didn't dare to let go of the man under his control. This fellow was still struggling on his deathbed. The eyes that looked at Li Yun were filled with malice. Li Yun had never met this person before, let alone become enemies. Hence, it was easy for him to guess who this resentment was directed at. "We could be considered friends in the past. We made friends through martial arts. No discord, no concord." Yang Jian laughed heartily, not minding Li Yun's impoliteness in the slightest. "We could be considered friends in the past?" In other words, they were now enemies and not friends. It was no wonder that Yang Jian's subordinates drew their weapons and started fighting the moment they saw him. If it wasn't for Li Yun's solid martial arts skills, he might have been severely injured in a single exchange. Yang Jian asked, "How are your parents? You're so young. Are they at ease letting you roam the world?" He couldn't detect any malice. This confused Li Yun. Did Yang Jian think that his parents were his master and his wife? Li Yun replied, "My master is already traveling around Zhongzhou. He said that he had important matters to attend to. His wife passed away during childbirth. She's no longer around." When Yang Jian heard this, his expression turned fearful. A man of steel like him actually revealed the melancholy of a young man. "She's already passed away?" Yang Jian sighed. His expression returned to normal. Right, I haven't asked for your name. What is it? This junior's surname is Li. My given name is Yun. My courtesy name is Han Mei. Yang Jian didn't have any malice. Li Yun also gave him face and didn't embarrass him. Yang Jian was surprised. The surname wasn't right. Xie Qian's son didn't have the surname Xie. His gaze fell on the subordinate who was subdued by Li Yun. He felt rather embarrassed. It was one thing to fall in love with a goddess but lose to Xie Qian. But at such an advanced age he still couldn't beat his son. How embarrassing. This person, he's your subordinate? Li Yun pursed his lips, indicating for Yang Jian to look at the person he had subdued. Yang Jian's face turned red. Coupled with his beautiful beard, if the audience in the streaming room saw him, they might think that he was cosplaying as Second Master Guan. My subordinate has offended you. I apologize on his behalf. When he finished speaking, Yang Jian actually bowed with his hands clasped in front. His attitude was very sincere. Li Yun couldn't care less about the silver spear in his hand. He hurriedly let go and went forward to help the person up. Now that the person was free, he immediately jumped up and wanted to sneak an attack from behind. However, he forgot that Dian Yan was watching him from the side. Dian Yan raised his leg and kicked the person's manhood. The person fell forward and fell flat on his face. Bah! What kind of hero is he to stab someone in the back? Dian Yan's voice was loud and he didn't bother to lower his voice. Yang Jian and the others who heard him blushed and felt even more guilty. Li Yun's expression was displeased. He asked Yang Jian, "Do you know why this person kept sneaking up on me?" Yang Jian's face turned even redder. He was ashamed and embarrassed. He was a little embarrassed and embarrassed. He lowered his voice and explained, "He admired your mother's talent and fell in love with her at first sight. He didn't expect that your mother and father had already been married for a few months and that she was pregnant. Of course, he couldn't express his love rashly. In the end, his courtship failed and he was beaten up by your father. He didn't get what he wanted and was beaten up. It hurt his pride. After so many years, he still can't get over it. His shattered little heart couldn't be glued back together." Chapter 692. Was he a love rival who had been beaten by master? Even so, this person wouldn't want to kill him the moment he saw him, right? Jiang Pingji could not understand it either. It was a godly theory. There are so many idiots in this world who have been rejected by the fair, rich and beautiful girls. It can't be that every single one of them wants to kill the son of a tall, rich and handsome man, right? Little angel Li Yun was innocent. The storyteller, Feng Zhen, looked at his master resentfully. "Don't speak bird language that normal mortals can't understand." Jiang Pingji coughed softly and said, "If that's the case, there won't be a need to fight, right?" Feng Zhen continued, "That is indeed the case. However, there were other arguments after that. That person actually started a rumor and slandered Han Mei's mother and father. Han Mei couldn't take it anymore and beat him up. Even though he was injured, he was still stubborn and didn't hold back his words. Han Mei was furious and wanted to make a move. Yang Jian had many people on his side. How could he just sit back and watch? He opened the gates. Slander. What kind of slander could make Li Yun, who had always been calm, lose his rationality and hurt someone? Feng Zhen said, "That person spread the rumor that Xie Qian was not a man. He actually pushed his wife to another man for the benefit of his family." Jiang Pingji asked, "What's going on?" Back then, Lucy had told her the story of Xie Qian and Wang Huyun. The husband and wife were a talented man and a beautiful woman. They were a match made in heaven. In layman's terms, this couple's public display of affection was so deranged that it made people want to raise a torch and burn them to ashes. Such a loving couple, how could there be a melodramatic plot where the man pushed the woman to another man? Moreover, Lucy had also said that Wang Huyun had been replaced by someone else after giving birth to Li Yun. In other words, the Wang Huyun after Li Yun's birth was just an impostor. Feng Zhen sighed, using words to reconstruct the scene. Yang Jian had originally wanted to be the peacemaker and cover up this incident. Little did he know that Xie Qian's wife's admirer wouldn't let it go. He had been taught a lesson by Li Yun and his mouth was still stiff. He said unwillingly, "Where is that coward Xie Qian?" Li Yun was deeply in love with his master Xie Qianru. Others could slander Li Yun, but they could never slander Xie Qianru. "Say that again. Be careful or I'll cut off your tongue. My master is a dignified man with an indomitable spirit. How could he be a coward? The other party mocked. How are you not a coward? Yang Jian's eyebrows twitched. He hurriedly ordered the retainers behind him to retreat 20 paces. If Xianxia wasn't a coward, why would he sell his wife for wealth? Li Yun's eyes widened in anger as he clenched the silver spear in his hand. Due to excessive force, his knuckles turned from white to blue. My master loved his wife deeply. Ever since she died in childbirth, he has never remarried. Not only that, they have to offer them fragrant fruits every day and they have to abstain from eating for 3 days before and after the Memorial Day. The two of them are deeply in love with each other and can be regarded as role models. You despicable person, don't slander their innocence. Li Yun had an expression that said, if you keep spouting nonsense, I'll stab you to death with my spear. The other party didn't back down and continued to mock him. Deep love. Died from dystocia? What a joke. More than 10 years ago I met her by chance. She was alive and well. She told me that it was Xianxia who had sold his wife for glory and forced her to give herself to another man. How could he do such an animal thing? You call him a man? Tell me, where is Xianxia? Ask him to come out and confront me. Li Yun was stunned. The other party spoke with such conviction that it didn't seem like he was lying. However, he still defended his master. The little princess liked to defend him without thinking. If you don't like it, then fight. Ridiculous, my master is from the Xia family of Jiangning. Why would he need to sell his wife for glory? He didn't know Xianxia's background. After all, his master didn't tell him about such a noble background. However, when they were in Xiangyang district, Lu Shi had mentioned it before and Li Yun had always remembered it. The other party couldn't help but choke on his words. He almost couldn't respond. After a while he said, so what if he's from the Xia family of Jiangning? Wouldn't the Xia family of Jiangning be scum who would sell his wife for glory? Yang Jian couldn't help but facepalm. Of course, the Xia family of Jiangning wouldn't be scum who would sell his wife for glory. In layman's terms, they were the second most powerful of the 4 noble families in Dongqing. Most of their clansmen were versed in both literature and martial arts. Xianxia was the young leader of his generation. His status was high and he even dared to look down on the emperor. Whether it was the emperor or Prince Changshou, who could make Xianxia abandon his beloved wife and his dignity as a man to push his wife to another man. Moreover, when his subordinate met Wang Huiyun, news of Xianxia's death had already been heard for 3 to 4 years. There was something fishy about this. Yang Jian had admonished this subordinate more than once, but this person just wouldn't turn back until he hit the wall. When his stubbornness flared up, he couldn't be stopped. You're simply being unreasonable. If you slander my master again, I'll make sure your blood splatters 3 feet high. Li Yun was so angry that his cheeks turned red. His eyes were bloodshot and his anger level was about to explode. Humph, do you think I'm afraid of you? Even if Xianxia came, I'd spit on him to death, let alone a young brat like you. Thus, this foul-mouthed person was taught a lesson by Li Yun. He pierced his left arm with a spear, creating a bloody hole. He wasn't crippled, but now that the alliance meeting was imminent, where would he find the time to let him recuperate? Li Yun's actions had indirectly caused the death of one of Yang Jian's generals. Yang Jian didn't say anything, but his subordinates weren't willing. Even if they weren't willing, Dian Yan wouldn't let Li Yun suffer. Thus, as the commotion continued, the commotion reached the drill ground. Honest and loyal Yi Buxiu. Hey, it's a one-on-one match between father and son. Whoever loses will call him father. Eloquent Zhou Xian. Streamer, do you want to give it a try? You can have 8 or 10 sons for free. Jiang Pingji rarely challenged one person to a one-on-one match. Usually, it was a group of people attacking her while she challenged a group of people. Seeing the audience in the streaming room egging her to challenge someone, she couldn't help but laugh. Streamer V. A match between father and son? If I had such a weak son, I'd be the first to kill my son's father. It'd be a waste of my genes. As soon as she posted the bullet screen, countless people followed suit. Dongguan Chao Dao Pao. This is the highest level of disdain I've ever heard. In the future, if anyone wants to dump the current one, just tell them directly, I don't despise you for having little money, no house, no job, no savings. It's just that your genes are weak. I'm afraid it'll affect the quality of my offspring. The streamer's words are still so vicious and unkind, but I like this type. Beautiful goddess. Hee hee, Can I ask the streamer for one of your eggs to modify my offspring? I promise I'll only do it and not touch it. Lazy catling. Sure, if you're not afraid that the streamer's knee will break your pelvic bone, just ask. Luo peanut candy. Haha. It's not just a pelvic bone, it's obviously a knee that breaks from the pelvic bone to the skull. It had to be said that Jiang Pingji's words were unkind. Her frequent audience members were also sharp-tongued. When the forest was big, there were all kinds of birds. When the streaming room was big, there were all kinds of scum. Jiang Pingji never read those dirty words. Occasionally, there were some discordant comments, but they were instantly drowned by the idle audience's bullet screen. Chapter 693. Zhou Xian Junimo Shao. Who's the one fighting with little angel Han Mei? He's so ugly it's a disgrace to the city. Chui Yu Buxiu. How is it a disgrace to the city? It's obviously a handsome, mature uncle. Look at that muscular body, that beautiful complexion, even the movement of his Adam's apple is so sexy. Those who say he's an eyesore and a disgrace to the city, tell me your house address and I'll send you a razor blade. Those who dared to go topless in the middle of winter were all real men. Jiang Pingji similarly shifted her gaze to Li Yun's opponent. Feng Zhen, who was beside her, said, "That's Yang Jian. That's Yang Jian. I heard others call him the handsome bearded duke, praising his beard for being long and beautiful. I can't tell how he's beautiful." She couldn't understand such aesthetics. To her, a beard was similar to armpit hair, belonging to the category of well-developed and luxuriant body hair. Feng Zhen didn't know what she was thinking. He said, "What people say is true." Yang Jian's side wasn't willing to bully others by taking turns, so they simply let Dian Yan and Li Yun take turns. In the end, they were slapped in the face one after another. Not only did Dian Yan have a rough face, but he was also tall and had extraordinary strength. He used brute force to break through technique, causing Yang Jian's side to suffer a lot. However, Dian Yan's flaws were also very obvious. His posture wasn't flexible enough, his moves were too crude, and his movements were wide open. There were many flaws. When encountering an experienced veteran, it was inevitable that he would be at a disadvantage. Li Yun was different. Xianxia taught him step by step, and he was extremely talented and hardworking. For more than 20 years he trained hard day and night and finally mastered exquisite spear techniques. His martial arts skills far surpassed those of others. If not for his lack of age and experience, it would be difficult for anyone present to make him suffer. He and Dian Yan joined forces and caused Yang Jian's side to lose a lot of face. Yang Jian originally wanted to watch from the sidelines and let them resolve their grievances, but he couldn't sit still. He had to personally take action to regain some face. Otherwise, if word got out that Yang Jian's subordinates were all weaklings who had been defeated by two young men, he wouldn't be able to keep his face. The morale of his troops would be even lower. It was the middle of winter, but Yang Jian didn't feel the cold at all. He took off his shirt, revealing his strong and muscular upper body. His chest and back were full of intersecting old wounds, some of which were fatal. Just by looking at them, one could imagine a near-death experience. "Commandant Yang, sorry for the offense." Li Yun cupped his fists in a salute and kept his distracting thoughts to focus on dealing with the situation. He did not even notice that his lord was surrounded by the crowd. Yang Jian appeared to be very calm without a trace of aggression. However, Li Yun did not dare to let his guard down. "I admire young people like you the most. You have the guts to charge in and take risks. It's good. You don't have to worry about my age, just do your best. You said that your spear techniques were taught by your master, then let me see how much of Xiaqian's abilities you have learned. This isn't a life and death situation. Don't overdo it." Li Yun used his spear while Yang Jian used his broadsword. This saber was specially made. The body of the saber was wide and long. The edge of the saber was incomparably sharp and flashed with a cold white light. As the saying goes, the longer one is, the stronger one is. In terms of weapons alone, Li Yun had a definite advantage. However, the moment they clashed, Jiang Pingji could already see the outcome. She clicked her tongue and said, "Han Mei has met his match this time." Feng Zhen asked her, "My lord means that Han Mei will lose?" "Not only will he lose, but he'll lose terribly." Jiang Pingji said, "The difference between the two isn't just inexperience. Han Mei's rhythm has been led by Yang Jian, leading the world into a trap. Yang Jian is a generation older than Han Mei, but his body is still in peak condition. Han Mei's spear techniques are good, his angles are tricky and nimble, and his strength is strong enough to split the skin between his thumb and forefinger. However, in Yang Jian's eyes he's too flashy and lacks momentum. Feng Zhen's level of swordsmanship was still at the level of a small public square dance class. How could he see anything? He only felt that Li Yun's speed was faster than Yang Jian's and his weapon was longer, so he definitely had an advantage. Jiang Pingji read his expression and asked him, "Do you really think Yang Jian's speed is slow?" Just as she finished speaking, Yang Jian, who seemed to be suppressed, suddenly made a counterattack. Not only did he avoid Li Yun's spear, but he also used the handle of his saber to hit Li Yun's wrist, causing the spear to fall out of his hand. At the same time, he used the back of his saber to press against Li Yun's neck. His lightning-fast speed and terrifying strength could be retracted and released at will, stopping at will. It made one's emotions fluctuate violently. No matter how fast you are, if you can't subdue or kill your enemy, it's just a flashy performance. Yang Jian seemed to be suppressed, but he was actually looking for Han Mei's weakness. He doesn't need to be fast, he just needs to ensure that he kills Han Mei faster than Han Mei can dodge and he'll win. On the other end, Li Yun was also frightened to the point of breaking out in a cold sweat. Even though Yang Jian didn't use any killing intent, Li Yun felt as if the King of Hell's judgment pen had swept across his throat. If Yang Jian wanted to, Li Yun's head would fall to the ground and he would lose his life on the spot. "Thank you for your guidance, County Military Chief Yang." Yang Jian put away his saber and returned it to its sheath. He said gently, "It's not a bad thing to be young and full of vigor. Hard work is the right path. I can beat you because I'm bullying you. I've eaten more than you by more than 10 years. In short, your martial arts skills are much better than my useless son's." "He's still useless, but you're already a valiant general. I'm so envious that Xiaqian's son is so promising. I really can't compare." The fight just now was more like a lesson than a one-on-one fight. Li Yun was the one being taught a lesson. Li Yun was ashamed. After calming down, he realized that he and Dian Yen had indeed gone overboard by humiliating the other party. Personal grudges should not be dragged into official matters and affect the relationship between the two powers. Han Mei. As he was thinking, a familiar voice called out from the crowd. His scalp went numb and he looked over in disbelief. "Greetings, my lord." He and Dian Yen immediately bowed, their hearts filled with guilt. "Who called the lord here?" "Rise." As she finished speaking, she turned her gaze to the bearded Duke Yang Jian. "I am the district magistrate of Xiangyang district." "Greetings, County Military Chief Yang." Feng Zhen secretly moved closer to Li Yun and Dian Yen, smiling maliciously. "I was afraid that you'd be at a disadvantage, so I called the lord here." Li Yun and Dian Yen threw him a look that said, "You brat, you're trying to get me killed." If the lord knew that they had a private fight with Yang Jian's subordinates and almost ruined the relationship between them, she'd definitely settle the score later. Yang Jian looked at Jiang Pingji and said, "So you're Lu Zhongqing's son. You're indeed a young and talented man with good looks." As he finished speaking, he patted Jiang Pingji's shoulder 3 times with his large fan-like palm. It was originally a test, but the strength of the first pat was restrained. Jiang Pingji's expression did not change. Yang Jian's heart skipped a beat. The strength of the second and third pat was suddenly increased. If it were an ordinary person, their arm would be dislocated, let alone stand steadily. However, Jiang Pingji's expression was the same as usual. Her small face smiled shyly. One look and it was obvious that she was well behaved. Chapter 694. County Military Chief Yang knows my father? We're all officials, how can we not know each other? Your father managed Hu County and was the county chief. Hu County borders Zhangzhou's Dongmen County. There were several food shortages, so he shamelessly borrowed some rations from your father. Only then did the situation turn for the better and the people could live in peace. It seemed like there was no enmity between Yang Jian and Lu Shi. The former even owed the latter a favor. If that was the case, things would be easy. If she poached Yang Jian's centurion position, he wouldn't be angry. After a simple greeting, Yang Jian glanced at Li Yun and Dian Yen. "Are these two your subordinates?" Jiang Pingji took the initiative to apologize. "I failed in my duties, allowing Han Mei and the others to offend the county military chief. I will discipline them strictly when I return. Yang Jian also knew that this was just a formality. She said she would discipline them strictly, but at most she would reprimand them. Don't blame them. Both of them are real men. They are enviable young men. This dispute started on our side. If that person hadn't verbally abused Han Mei, both sides wouldn't have caused such a ruckus on the drill ground. He shouted at the crowd. A middle-aged man with his left arm tied up came over. He was pale from blood loss. This is your fault. Apologize to District Magistrate Liu. The middle-aged man didn't pester her. He cupped his fists and apologized. At this point, Jiang Pingji couldn't say anything else. This matter could only be written off. However, I watched the county military chief give pointers to Han Mei's martial arts. I deeply admire him. I wonder if I have the honor of receiving pointers from the county military chief? Jiang Pingji's principle was simple. She would pick herself up from where she fell. She would pick herself back from where she suffered. She would seek revenge from where she lost face. After beating up the young, the old would come. How normal was that? Although it wasn't Yang Jian's fault, his subordinate attacked first and verbally abused him. Yang Jian still taught Han Mei a lesson. Since that was the case, it was normal for her to teach Yang Jian a lesson. The audience in the streaming room was in an uproar. The bullet screen flew from one end of the screen to the other. Mu Xianying marries me. I see that you are heroic. Do you dare to fight me? Mou Zinai bedtime. With such a beautiful scene, why don't we resolve our worries with a battle? Xie Yuan Shishou. 1 minute later, Yang Jian said with a wronged expression, I drank a cup of tea just now. Yang Jian wanted to reject her, but when he thought of Jiang Pingji's performance just now, he became interested. Why not? Jiang Pingji said shyly, my skills are crude and I don't want to embarrass myself in public. Can we find a secluded place? Yang Jian didn't suspect anything. A young man's pride needed to be protected. What if it was broken and couldn't be glued back together? In the end, Jiang Pingji didn't choose a weapon. She planned to fight bare-handed. Naturally, Yang Jian couldn't take advantage of her. However, he soon realized that this was a huge mistake. Yang Jian couldn't understand how such a thin and slender body could generate such great power. It was as heavy as a mountain, and one would lose all will to fight for it with just a glance. Although he would not despair, Jiang Pingji's strength was terrifying. Yang Jian could only passively defend and try to find an opening. However, Jiang Pingji wasn't a fresh young man like Li Yun. She was a veteran. She seemed to be full of openings, but in reality she was full of killing intent. Yang Jian initially thought that he had a chance, but the price he paid was that his arm was almost broken. He jumped away and put some distance between them. He said with lingering fear, what a good way of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. You really are your father's son. It was so dark. You flatter me, county military chief. Jiang Pingji's expression didn't change. She used her hand like a knife and attacked Yang Jian's face. Yang Jian's heart sank. He raised his hand to block her wrist. At the same time, he adjusted his center of gravity and squatted to avoid the incoming palm wind that swept across his face. With your martial arts, how does it look like I'm asking for advice? Not only did he not find an opportunity, but he was also being suppressed by Jiang Pingji. Her palms were so dense that they left afterimages. Just looking at them sent a chill down his spine. Of course I'm asking for advice, but it's not me asking for advice from county military chief. No matter what, Han Mei is still my subordinate. Hitting him is the same as hitting me. Jiang Pingji didn't choose to spar with him in front of others. Instead, she chose to do it behind others. She just had to get back at him. She would gain something from it, but she would lose her false reputation to Yang Jian. County military chief, just take it that I'm acting like a child. I'm sure the county military chief can understand, right? Yang Jian laughed bitterly in his heart. Faced with Jiang Pingji's increasingly concentrated and fierce attacks, he could only retreat. Fortunately, Jiang Pingji didn't go overboard. Her injuries were in inconspicuous places and she didn't attack his face. What shocked Yang Jian the most was not Jiang Pingji's speed or techniques, but her intuition and experience. She didn't seem like a pampered and spoiled Langjun from an aristocratic family. She seemed more like someone who had crawled out from a pile of corpses. Even Yang Jian had accumulated more than 10 years of experience. He had experienced thousands of battles before he could develop his current combat qualities. Thinking too much, Yang Jian's mind was distracted and he revealed an opening. Jiang Pingji circled to his blind spot. Her right hand formed a claw and wrapped around his neck. Her left hand pinned his hands behind his back. Then she used her strength to flip him to the ground. All her actions were done in one go. By the time Yang Jian reacted, the situation was already over. He had no chance of winning, so he could only admit defeat. Forget it. I can't win against you youngsters. Jiang Pingji released her grip and helped him up from the ground. Thank you for showing mercy, County Military Chief. Jiang Pingji's words clearly indicated that she had admitted defeat. Yang Jian knew that she was saving him some face, but he was still displeased. However, he still had this bit of magnanimity. He wouldn't be calculative with Jiang Pingji. You are the same as your father. Both of you are foxes. Your father is treacherous with his words, while you are merciless with your hands. What Yang Jian didn't mention was that during those years when there was a food shortage in Dongmen County, although Lu Shi had borrowed some grain, the interest he paid was unscrupulous. It couldn't be compared to the printed money, but it had allowed Yang Jian to witness the black-hearted literati and the honeyed words of businessmen. Now from Lu Shi's son, he saw the savagery of a martial artist. Your junior is ashamed. During this alliance meeting, even your father didn't dare to come over and talk to me about friendship, yet you barged in recklessly. Fortunately, on the surface we are still on bad terms, so it won't affect you much. During the alliance meeting, try to restrain yourselves. Don't let the two families get too close so as not to affect you and your father. Yang Jian was able to become the county military chief, not only because of his background and talent, but also because of Prince Changshuo's promotion. In other words, from the perspective of outsiders, he was on Prince Changshuo's side. Now that he had joined the alliance meeting, he couldn't be friends. Jiang Pingji didn't pretend to decline, she agreed without hesitation. Oh yes, I have something to ask the county military chief in private. Yang Jian asked, what is it? How long have you known my father and Han Mei's father, Xianxia? Yang Jian and Lu Shi's interactions were mostly on official occasions. His relationship with Xianxia was more personal. We've known each other since we were young. Why are you asking? Jiang Pingji crossed her arms in front of her chest. Her expression was thought-provoking. There were some things that she wanted to verify further. Although Qiguan Rang had already gotten the answer from Wei Yuan, Jiang Pingji still wanted to investigate further. However, it wasn't a good time to ask. Chapter 695. According to you, the conflict between Han Mei and your subordinates was initially because your subordinates mistook Han Mei for Xianxia? Yang Jian admitted shamefully and vaguely explained the reason. Jiang Pingji said bluntly, but I heard from my father that Aunt Xia had died from a hemorrhage. Yang Jian said seriously, how could a junior like you understand the grudges between elders? He didn't believe that Xianxia was that kind of person. Why would he sell his wife for glory? Moreover, when Wang Huiyun entered the former emperor's harem, Xianxia had already been dead for a year. His corpse had decomposed into bones. Who could stop a widow from remarrying? Xianxia, who had been dead for a year, had pushed his wife to the former emperor? Wasn't that nonsense? However, Li Yun's appearance proved that Xianxia wasn't dead. He was still alive and kicking after more than 20 years. Jiang Pingji said, I used to hear my wet nurse tell bedtime stories. She said that there are lonely souls and wild ghosts with no one to rely on. Their hearts are filled with hostility and they are jealous of the living. They linger in the bustling world, so they often lurk around people who are about to die. Before they die, they seize their bodies and escape back to the world of the living. This story isn't realistic, but both Buddhism and Taoism believe that people have souls. What do you think, County Military Chief? Yang Jian was dumbfounded. This is just an absurd demonic story. It is indeed just a story, but have you heard about Aunt Xia before she gave birth? How did the world evaluate her? From what I know, she and my mother are known as the twin beauties of Langia. They are both talented and beautiful. She is one of the most beautiful women in the world. She has an eidetic memory. She can even recite the classics and history books fluently. Jiang Pingji knew about Wang Huiyun partly from her own investigation and partly from Lu Shi. Such an intelligent woman. If Xianxia really had evil intentions, do you think she would obey her husband or seek help from her family? The Xia family of Gongning is indeed scary, but do you think the Wang family of Langia is useless? Wang Huiyun was the most outstanding noble lady in the Wang family of Langia. She was their pride and the face they displayed to the outside world. In the end, the daughter of the Wang family first gave herself to the ruthless former emperor, then climbed into his bed and finally conspired with Prince Changshu? She had already laid her hands on all three royal brothers. Didn't she think her taste was too strong? Even if Xianxia was shameless and Wang Huiyun threw caution to the wind, the Wang family of Langia could not sit back and do nothing. A person's temperament wouldn't change for no reason. Auntie Xia didn't suffer any setbacks. She only gave birth to a child. The midwife said that she had a hemorrhage after giving birth and there was nothing she could do. In the end, he didn't die. It was just that when he woke up, his personality changed drastically. Xianxia suspected that there was a demon behind him, but he didn't expect that the other party would find out and kill him in secret. I learned all these details from my father. Yang Jian furrowed his brows. According to Jiang Pingji's explanation, apart from the additional element of fantasy, the logic actually made sense. Why are you telling me this? Jiang Pingji's gaze sharpened. Han Mei respects his master very much and loves his mistress, whom he has never met. Because Xianxia did not say it clearly, Han Mei did not dare to confirm Xianxia's blood relationship with him just based on the words of this junior's father. However, a master was a master after all. A master for a day was a father for life. There was no difference. No matter what the truth of this matter was, Xianxia and Wang Huiyun's reputation was already in shambles. Han Mei would not be happy. This junior's words are insignificant and cannot help Han Mei with anything. I'm telling this to the county chief. I only hope that before the truth comes to light or before you seek confirmation from Xianxia, you will first control your subordinates' mouths. Don't make wild guesses. Only one's own children could be beaten up. It was fine if outsiders came to make noise, but they also bullied others. This was not allowed. Yang Jian understood. He didn't mind Jiang Pingji's lack of manners. The two left the secluded area. Li Yun and the others, as well as Yang Jian's subordinates, were waiting anxiously outside. Seeing the two of them appear, everyone came forward to welcome them. Let's go back. We'll seek guidance from the county chief another day. Jiang Pingji's face did not show any joy. She wasn't exactly sad, but she was very disappointed. She must have suffered a setback. On the way back, Li Yun and Dian Yan followed behind obediently. They hung their heads. One big and one small, they looked like two children who had done something wrong. The matter has been resolved. In the future, avoid contact with County Chief Yang's people. Yang Jian had already spoken, so Jiang Pingji would not cause trouble for herself. Yes, I will obey my lord's orders. Feng Zhen felt the tension in the air and coughed twice. My lord, I've already tested that person. After some hesitation, he agreed. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Speaking of which, she had just witnessed Yang Jian teaching Li Yun a lesson. Then she pulled Yang Jian aside to teach him a lesson. How long had it been? How did Feng Zhen successfully hook up with his target and even persuade him to jump ship? Jiang Pingji also admired Feng Zhen. She lowered her voice. Your lord is still trapped in Wanzhou. You're already thinking about how to conquer the rivers. I have to prepare early just in case something happens, Feng Zhen said shamelessly. Because of their outdated shipbuilding technology, if they were to fight on the water and encounter the navy, they would most likely be at a disadvantage. Most of Dongqing's territory was inland, but there were places where rivers and waters were accessible. If the enemy occupied the rivers in the future, how would they fight the war? Rather than sharpening their spears at the last minute, it was better to prepare early. It wasn't easy for Feng Zhen to encounter a talent in the navy. If he didn't think of a way to kidnap her, would he have to wait for another talent scout to discover him? That's true. Preparing for a rainy day is indeed a good habit. Jiang Pingji recalled the great universal geographical map of Dongqing in her mind. If she coveted the territory of the Mengs in Songzhou, she would have to face the natural defenses of the rivers. Songzhou's terrain was special. It was a battleground for military strategists. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. If they retreated, they could rely on the natural defenses. If they attacked, they could make use of the complicated rivers and waters. It was difficult for ordinary troops to conquer. It was also where Dongqing was connected to two other countries. It was a vital part of the country. There were 3 natural defenses: Hanchang Pass, Zhangjiang Pass and Yumen Pass. If Jiang Pingji wanted to expand her territory and encroach on the territory of other countries, she couldn't avoid Songzhou. If she started training the navy now, it would come in handy in the future. A duck that couldn't swim was worse than a weakling in the water. A mere 3,000 navy that was proficient in the water could annihilate an enemy army 10 times their size. If that's the case, does my lord have a reward? Of course I can. Let me make this clear. There's no wine or beauties here. Tell me, what reward do you want? Fengzhen, my lord, there's still a strong smell of alcohol on you. You said there's no wine. You're clearly pocketing it. After a while he could only open his mouth sullenly. I haven't thought about it yet. I'll keep it for now. Jiang Pingji couldn't help but laugh. Fengzhen's aggrieved expression was really amusing. The talent that Fengzhen had poached didn't come with them. Jiang Pingji didn't even know if he was round or flat. Chapter 696. He wanted to be alone and lick his wounds. Yang Jian's only son Yang Tao, who was 22 years old, entered the tent. Yang Tao was born to his legal wife. He died of illness shortly after giving birth. All these years his concubines gave birth to a string of daughters, but he never had a son. Thus Yang Jian only had this one son. Deep down he treasured him, but outwardly he acted like a strict father. Is something the matter? His son looked troubled. Father, Lu Shi sent someone over to borrow someone from us. Yang Jian was suspicious. Borrow who? Yang Tao replied, the person Lu Shi wants to borrow is a centurion. What? A centurion wasn't an insignificant soldier. Yang Jian only had 15,000 men under him. A centurion was quite precious. Yang Tao looked at his father hesitantly, his slightly immature face showing some hesitation. If you have something to say, just say it. Are you a man? Yang Jian suddenly raised his voice, scaring Yang Tao into saying, forgive me, father. Lu Shi thinks the person is ugly and unique. He wants to borrow him. Ugly, unique? How ugly could he be? Yang Jian didn't believe that Jiang Pingji was the type to cause trouble. She must have a reason for asking to borrow someone. He furrowed his brows and raised his hand to call the centurion over. Even Yang Jian, who wasn't obsessed with looks, felt disgusted. It hurt his eyes. The centurion was shorter than the average person. His right leg was injured. His limp could be seen after a few quick steps. Not only that, but his face was ugly. His eyebrows were far apart, one high and one low. His eyes were long and sunken. His nose bridge was sunken. Both sides of his nose were covered with freckles. His lips were thick and black. His neck ratio was different from the average person's. His shoulders looked a little sunken. He didn't seem to have enough energy. His arms were slightly short. Recalling the description of ugly and unique, he frowned, looking slightly unhappy. For a handsome and imposing man like Yang Jian, he had a slight dislike for ugly people. But why did Lu Shi's son want to borrow this person? Do you know the district magistrate of Xiangyang district, Lu Shi? Yang Jian carefully looked at the person's appearance. There were flaws everywhere. The man stood with his hands by his sides, lowered his eyes and said in a low voice, I don't know him, but I've heard of him. This person's voice was hoarse. Naturally, it wasn't the kind of voice that was magnetic. Rather, it was the hoarseness of a hoarse voice. It was ear-piercing. Yang Jian grew more and more dissatisfied. He didn't have the desire to find out more about this person. That face ruined the atmosphere. He said straightforwardly, Magistrate Lu thinks that you look unique and asked me to lend you to him for a few days. Are you willing to go? The question was just out of politeness, so naturally the man wouldn't object. However, Yang Jian was also a scheming person. Unknowingly, he had drawn a wave of hatred towards Jiang Pingji. This lowly one is willing. Then go ahead. Don't neglect Magistrate Lu. Yang Jian sent the man away. Yang Tao watched quietly, a look of distress on his face. He wanted to speak a few times, but Yang Jian asked him about his studies in martial arts. Yang Tao could only swallow the words that were on the tip of his tongue. After dealing with Yang Jian with much difficulty, Yang Tao returned to his tent gloomily. Not long after, a young scholar of similar age came in. The young scholar looked at Yang Tao amused. What's wrong? Why are you so gloomy? His eyes were like a clear spring, containing an enchanting depth and wisdom. His entire body was surrounded by a refined and scholarly aura. Yang Tao raised his head and looked at his friend with some lingering fear. After a while, he lowered his head again, mentally preparing himself for a long time. "But, there's something. I'll say it. Don't be angry." Yang Tao's expression was one of ingratiation. "What is it?" The young man was as gentle as ever. "Didn't you previously think highly of a centurion who was in charge of training the troops?" Yang Tao stammered. "Yes, I remember. What happened to this person?" "He was borrowed by someone else." After Yang Tao finished speaking, he shrunk his neck. He didn't hear anything else for a long time. He quietly opened his eyes and saw that his friend was still maintaining his upright posture. He wasn't angry, but his expression that seemed to be smiling yet not smiling had disappeared. In its place was a solemn expression that was like water. "He was borrowed. Who borrowed him?" the young man asked. Yang Tao said, "Xiangyang District Magistrate Lu." She said that the person was uniquely ugly and wanted to borrow him to take a look. The young man's lips curled into a cold smile. He threw the scroll in his hand to the ground. Although it didn't make much noise, his imposing manner was suffocating. "Borrow? Heh. I'm afraid he'll never return what he borrowed." Yang Tao sat obediently on the spot, looking like an obedient student waiting to be judged. The young man didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Tell me the details of that time in detail." Yang Tao didn't dare to hide anything. He babbled on and on, not missing the change in his father's expression. "Uncle, did you mention the reason why Lu Shi borrowed him?" the young man asked him. "Yes." The young man murmured, I hope this will be a thorn in his heart and he won't side with Lu Shi." Yang Tao asked doubtfully, "I really don't know why Lu Shi borrowed this person? Just because he's ugly?" The young man resisted the urge to facepalm. Lu Shi didn't want to see how ugly a person was. He clearly wanted to train the navy. Train the navy? Yang Tao was shocked. He immediately asked cautiously, "Why did Lu Shi train the navy?" The young man asked in return, "Then why do you think Lu Shi borrowed this person? Was it really because the other party was uniquely ugly?" Such a reason could only coax a 3-year-old child. It couldn't coax him. If he really wanted to train the navy, then wouldn't this person's ambition be? "Maybe you're overthinking." After all, no matter how one looked at it, the young man's speculation was too shocking. Lu Shi's territory was located in the north of Dongqing. Most of it was basins and hills. There weren't many river routes and there weren't any large-scale naval battles. What was the difference between training the navy and drawing water with a sieve? The young man didn't think so. The Lu father and son are low-key, so most people ignore them. If you pay close attention, it's not difficult to discover their ambition. At this time they want a talent to train the navy from us. Their ambition is obvious. Yang Tao said in distress, "Even if what you said is true, Lu Shi can still think of other ways if he doesn't borrow from us." The young man looked at Yang Tao with pity as if he was looking at a retard. The crux of the problem wasn't how ambitious Lu Shi was, but that they had been poached by someone else. Perhaps Lu Shi was addicted to poaching and would keep an eye on them next time. Yang Jian's family business wasn't big. If it was handed over to the innocent Yang Tao, he wouldn't even know it when someone else poached him. Having such a childhood sweetheart, he was also mentally exhausted. Yang Tao also realized that he had said the wrong thing. He asked him in a low voice, "Why don't I think of a way to get him back?" The young man's eyes were filled with even more despair. How could his good friend make such a stupid suggestion? Get him back. If Yang Tao dared to go after him, Yang Jian would be the first to break his leg. Forget it, forget it. He's just a talent. There are many people in our army who are proficient in naval battles. It's not a pity to lose him. Chapter 697. On the other side, the uniquely ugly centurion quietly followed the soldier who led the way. He didn't say a word along the way. Considering that the centurion's legs were inconvenient, the soldier didn't walk too fast. The details were indescribably considerate. After a while, the centurion's brown cheeks were slightly hot, and he thanked the soldier in a low, muffled voice. "Master Feng has specially instructed us. It's not a small contribution." The soldier replied in a businesslike manner. "During winter one should walk faster so that the body could generate heat from the inside out and resist the cold. However, in order to match the centurion's pace, the few soldiers who led the way didn't dare to complain. They endured the cold and sent him out of the tent. They lowered their heads and lowered their hands. Go in. The Lord and Master are already waiting for you inside. Don't let them wait too long. Thank you very much. The centurion cupped his fists and then carefully entered the tent. When he opened the tent curtain, warm air with the light fragrance of pear blossoms blew into his face, dispersing the cold air around him. The tent had been carefully tidied up. A layer of soft animal skin cushion was spread on the ground, and an exquisite and small incense burner was placed in the middle. It finally looked like a commander's tent. I'm Qi Kuang. Greetings to District Magistrate Liu. The centurion's legs were inconvenient, so his salute wasn't as neat as a normal person's, but it could be seen that his attitude was serious and not perfunctory. There were two people in the tent. A young man sat upright on the seat of honor. He looked a few years younger than Yang Tao and his eyes were full of vigor. The other person was the scholar Feng Zhen who had tried to rope him in. Compared to Jiang Pingji's neat sitting posture, Feng Zhen seemed a little weak and boneless. He leaned against the table as if he had no bones. He squinted his eyes and looked at the centurion Qi Kuang. My lord, this is the talent I mentioned before. Jiang Pingji agreed and said to Qi Kuang, get up. The weather is cold and the ground is cold. It's not good for your legs to kneel for a long time. The centurion Qi Kuang stood up with his hands on both sides and his head slightly lowered. His gaze fell on the bronze incense burner not far in front of Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji asked Qi Kuang, do you know why I borrowed you? Qi Kuang replied calmly, the county chief already told me that District Magistrate Liu saw my unique appearance and borrowed me for a look. Hearing the reply, Jiang Pingji secretly frowned. No matter who saw Qi Kuang's appearance, they could understand the vile mockery hidden in the words, unique appearance. Yang Jian wasn't easy to deal with either. He really knew how to make enemies for her. Even if he did not know that Jiang Pingji was only pretending to borrow people and was actually poaching people, he was still cautious and dug a trap for her. However, in the end it was still Feng Zhen, the prodigal son's fault. Just listen to what kind of lousy excuses this brat came up with. Who would do something like this? She, as the lord, had to take the blame for the little princess's counselor. Kiske, I'm not happy. That's just an excuse, it can't be taken seriously. As for my true motive, do you know? She looked at Qi Kuang with a faint smile. Her godly skill, the great deception spell, had entered cooldown and was waiting to be used. Qi Kuang was startled. His expression finally changed and he looked a little cautious. I understand. The livestream was still ongoing. The audience in the livestream room knew that Jiang Pingji was going to recruit new employees again, so they stayed there and refused to leave. According to their understanding of Jiang Pingji, this lord had a problem with appearance. The people she recruited were either young or extremely handsome men. Even if they were old, they were still old handsome men. Even if they were not handsome, they were talented people with outstanding temperament. They wouldn't be ugly if they were dressed up a little. In short, appearance was very important. However, reality was cruel. Their passion was met with an unprecedented attack, and their hearts were broken. Lining Dianding Wei Zixiao. Streamer, I know it's wrong to be a rooster, but I still have to say that after rounding up Qi Kuang's appearance, he is still a long way from passing the standard. Streamer, are you sure you want to rope this person in? You will pull down the average appearance of the whole group. Aren't you known as the Universal Beauty's Heavenly Group? Don't give up on treatment. Zishuan Beishwabafuzi. Although the mockery above is very harsh, I also think. Yes, we don't welcome Qi Kuang to join us. The reason is very simple. He is too ugly and will affect the mood of work. However, as the lord of a powerful group, the streamer can't be so willful. No matter how much we object, we probably can't shake the streamer's determination. It was better to accept reality. Competitive Qiguan rang. As expected, even if we're in a different plane, the aesthetic standards of humans are the same. This is a cruel, cold, and superficial world. But then again, Qi Kuang isn't valued by Yang Jian. Isn't it because he's ugly? If he was good-looking, how could the streamers ho be his turn? They had been dug out long ago. Now that they were short of people, it was already good enough that they had people, yet they were still picky. Ugly as no salt Li Han Mei. I can accept anything that is beneficial to the streamer. Pretty or ugly, I don't care. Actually, from a male's point of view, I still hope that the overall attractiveness of the streaming room can be lowered, with fewer handsome guys and more beautiful girls. Seriously, can you imagine when I'm dating my girlfriend she's holding up the pretty boy Liun's photo making all sorts of noises and screams? Jiang Pingji glanced at the series of IDs. Deep down she was already holding back her laughter and suffering. These IDs were obviously fans who hated them deeply. Especially self-cleansing Feng Zisher. He was so black. Feng Zhen, who was at the side, didn't know what was going on. He shifted uneasily, changing his kneeling position. Jiang Pingji collected her thoughts and focused on dealing with Qi Kuang. Since you know, are you willing? She never liked to beat around the bush. It was the same when she recruited people. She went straight to the point. If he was willing, he was willing. If he wasn't, yes. She would think of a way to make people willing. Qi Kuang looked hesitant. He plucked up his courage and raised his head. His eyes met Jiang Pingji's. After their eyes met, he quickly lowered his eyelids. He secretly clenched his fists, plucked up his courage and told the truth. According to what I know, District Magistrate Lu doesn't need to train the Navy now. Recruiting me is just to keep an idler. Qi Kuang felt that even if he jumped ship he wouldn't be put in an important position. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows. So he was worried about this. She said, "We don't need the Navy now, but it doesn't mean that we don't need to train them. It also doesn't mean that we won't need them in the future. Soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used in one day. When we need to use the Navy and I only have non-swimmers, it'll be too late. As for keeping an idler, my family has a big business. Even if I don't need the Navy in this lifetime, so what if I keep you?" Qi Kuang was silent for a while. Jiang Pingji didn't rush him. "I was born ugly, my legs are handicapped and my appearance is unsightly. District Magistrate Lu, do you really not mind?" You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.